Hello. There we go. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the April 1st, 2025 Board of Supervisors meeting, and it's not a joke. It's not an April Fool's joke, by the way. So we'll call this meeting to order here at 9 o'clock. As customary, we'll start off with a moment of silence, and it looks like we have a couple, so we'll start off with Vice Chair, and then Supervisor Sabatier, you have one as well, or two.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I'm asking the board and the public to join in a moment of silence for Kermit Knutson, a longtime Lakeport resident who passed away this past Friday evening. Kermit was a retired Pacific Bell employee. He served 25 years as a member of the Community Service Club Early Lake Lions of Lakeport, California. He was a past president of that club and the zone chairman for Lions clubs throughout Lake County. Kermit contributed greatly to our community and will be missed. Thank you.
Go ahead, Supervisor Sabatier.
So I have two, and I'll be brief for both of them. I think it's important to remember those of the past, and while I never met Barbara Wicks, she was important to the County of Lake. She was the clerk of the board in the 1980s for quite some time, and I know from my work here as a Board of Supervisor that the individuals who sit in this seat, such as Johanna, are very important to the work that we do, and so I want to remember Barbara Wicks, who worked hard for the county and was cherished by those in the community. I also want to have a moment of silence. We had unfortunate disaster in Marysville where a deputy named Osmar Rodarte was shot and killed in the line of duty. He was 27 years old. He was a veteran. He was working on a narcotics task force at the time and attempting to make an arrest. While this was in Marysville, when things like this happen in our law enforcement and first responders, this reverberates to other agencies, including here in Lake County, because they do very similar work and take similar risks. And thinking of all of our law enforcement, our first responders, and also keeping Osmar Rodarte in our thoughts.
Vice Chair Rasmussen, would you lead us in the pledge?
Yes. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Item 4, consideration of extra items not appearing on the posted agenda. It looks like we have one. Consideration of extra agenda. Oh, go ahead, Maria.
Thank you, Maria Turner, Community Development Director. The item before you, the extra item before you is an amendment to an MOU between the Lake County Sanitation District and Earth Foundries Incorporated for the mobile pyrolysis project in Middletown. I practiced that one. The need for the modification of the MOU came to the department's attention after the posting of the agenda, and the project is up against a hard deadline with the end of burn season on April 30th. So we do request this be taken up as an extra.
Thank you for explaining that. I don't know if I could have done so. Lloyd?
So, Mr. Chair, just for your board's consideration, for purposes of the announcement, this extra item is for consideration of the extra agenda item and consideration, that's A, and then B, consideration of First Amendment to Memorandum of Understanding MOU between the Lake County Sanitation District and Earth Foundries, Inc. for operations and placement of a mobile pyrolysis unit carbonizer in Middletown. So there will be two separate actions from your board.
Okay. So we'll start out with adding it, and then we'll figure out when to fill it in later. All right. So, consideration of extra item, agenda item, consideration of First Amendment to Memorandum of Understanding between the Lake County Sanitation District and Earth Foundries Incorporated for operations and placement of a mobile pyrolysis unit carbonizer in Middletown. And so we're basically looking for action on adding it. Supervisor Pyska?
Yeah, time is of the essence for this project, and we can't afford to lose any more days, so I appreciate you bringing this forward as an extra item.
All right, so I'll open it up to the public in case there's anybody that'd like to comment on this. Bring it back to the board. All right, for action to add it.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the extra item as this item came to the attention subsequent to the posting of the current agenda, and there is no need to take action before the next agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second.
A need, sorry, there is a need. I said no need. A need to take action before the posting of the next agenda.
All right,
Second as amended.
all right. I have a motion to end a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Do you think we should take it right now or just move forward?
I would say move forward and then place it at 6.9 after 6.8.
Excellent. Next item on the agenda is approval of the consent agenda. The consent agenda is filled with items that are considered non-controversial. However, there are times when folks on the board or in public would like to pull these items and can do so at this time. So we'll go ahead and look at the board and see if there's anyone that would like to pull some of these items or one of these items or none. Supervisor Sabatier?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to pull item 5.6 for a quick clarification.
5-6. Any others? Not hearing any, I'll open it up to the public and see if there are any that would like to be pulled, any public, from the public that would like to pull any items. Anyone on Zoom? All right, we'll move it back to the board for action.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda as proposed with the exception of 5.6.
I second that.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0-0. All right. Next is public input. It's our 9:02. With public input, you can come up and speak for 3 minutes. And just know that we cannot comment if it's not on the agenda. And if there is something that we can help you with, we will defer you or refer you to the proper director or your supervisor.
Good morning. My name is Rachel Dillman Parsons, Social Services Director. I am here to give a brief update on food bank cuts. You may have recently seen some coverage in the news and social media. While Social Services does not manage our local food banks, we do work in cooperation with both the Gleaners and Redwood Empire Food Bank. The Gleaners manages the TFAP, or Temporary Emergency Food Assistance Program, for Lake County, and REFB manages the Commodity Supplemental Food Program, CSFP, for Lake County, which is aimed specifically at low-income and elderly individuals. On March 21st, I checked in with both food banks because there had been rumors of cuts flying around. Gleaners didn't report any disruption as of the 21st. Redwood Empire Food Bank reported missing 7 USDA truckloads of food, and they were not sure if or when they would be delivered, the value of which was between $670,000 to $750,000. Last Friday on the 28th, USDA did announce that $500 million in TFAP food had been permanently canceled. So the USDA canceled truckloads, included varieties of milk, frozen protein, canned protein, eggs, dried fruit, all desirable and preferred by people who come to our food banks for their groceries. This cut is particularly troubling given skyrocketing cost of groceries. Over 16,000 people, 25% of Lake County, and receive CalFresh benefits. Many families who would have gone to the food bank for groceries or who do go to the food bank for groceries make too much money to receive CalFresh, but not enough to put food on the table. These cuts are going to increase food insecurity nationwide. TFAP represented 20% of REFB's groceries. Loretta at the Gleaners acknowledges the cut will hurt, but Gleaners does not rely solely on TFAP. She also wished to thank our local grocery stores for participating in the Edible Food Recovery Program, which is a big help. So kudos to our local grocery stores. Food distributions will continue. The purpose of my comments today are simply public awareness. I have no ability to resolve this issue beyond advocacy, and I would encourage any Lake County residents who want these USDA food bank funding to be returned to contact your federal legislators to express that desire. I've also brought some resources for the public, some information on our outreach for CalFresh, some food resource lists. I'll leave them up here if anybody wants to grab them. I have also reached out to both the Gleaners and Redwood Empire Food Bank if they would wish to provide additional comments today if they're present. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Can I just ask that we have a presentation soon coming up, Rachel, as these things change so that we can have a discussion on it and get a little bit deeper? Thank you.
All right.
Tammy Alexei with the American Red Cross, and I'm just here in support of the programs. The Redwood Empire Food Bank and the Gleaners are both partners of ours, so we're just here to support them.
Thank you. Is there anyone on Zoom? So I'm going to read the letter of recognition from the Double Eagle Ranch POA. And it's directed to the Board of Supervisors and Director Turner and Manager Beltramo of the Code Enforcement. And it says, Double Eagle Ranch Property Owners Association held our bi-monthly meeting earlier this month, at which our residents expressed a desire to recognize an outstanding county employee within the Community Development Department. In October 2024, Mr. Beltramo notified a DERPOA via email that he was assigning Mr. Todd Elliott to the Double Eagle Ranch area to address issues that have gone unaddressed for several years. Mr. Elliott has been working in the Double Eagle Ranch area off and on since at least 2022. This letter is to recognize the exceptional job Mr. Elliott is doing and the tremendous difference he has made toward the comfort, safety, and overall well-being of the residents while working closely and collaboratively with property owners to abate violations. Residents have voiced their appreciation to the Double Eagle Ranch POA committee members on several occasions at the March meeting. Residents asked that the committee submit an official letter of recognition to the county, as there are many notable differences in our small community. On behalf of the residents of Double Eagle Ranch, we would like to extend our appreciation and gratitude to Mr. Elliott for his continued efforts. We would also like to thank Mr. Beltramo for assigning Mr. Elliott to our area. Sincerely, Double Eagle Ranch Property Owners Association. So I just wanted to read that. Go ahead.
Thank you for reading that. We are very, very proud of all of our team members in code enforcement. Not only do they care about their community, but they care about the people in it. It just is really neat that they took the time to write a letter of appreciation. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. I felt the need to do so when I received it. So with that, if there's no other public input, all right, doesn't look like there is. So 6.2 pet of the week. We will not be having one this week. They don't like the rain today, I guess. So we'll move on to 6. Yeah, we don't want them getting wet and having to take other baths and roll in the mud and all that stuff. So new and noteworthy at the library, 6.3. And looks like we have our librarian aboard, Mr. Christopher Veach.
Thank you. So, thank you for giving me just a few minutes to talk about what's new and noteworthy at the library. And this month, I wanted to highlight a new novel released in March, Wild Dark Shore by Charlotte McConaghy. Charlotte McConaghy is an Australian author, and her novel Once There Were Wolves won the Indie Book Award for Fiction in 2022 and is being developed for television. Wild Dark Shore is a thriller set at the world's largest seed bank on a tiny island not far from Antarctica. The island was once filled with researchers, but now only Dominic and his children, Raph, Fen, and Orly, remain, until a woman named Rowan mysteriously washes up on shore. Together, they must learn to trust one another to protect the seed bank from increasingly violent storms and rising sea waters. Matt Bell of the New York Times writes, "In Wild Dark Shore, we're shown why a person might withdraw from the messiness of life after tragedy and trauma. It's not a good idea to fall in love," Rowan warns Fen, "not with people and not with places." The novel also offers its injured characters a path back to connection and community, a risk the author argues must be worth taking, no matter how fraught the future, no matter how temporary the family. As Rowan reflects later in the novel, what is the use of safety if it deprives you of everything else? Wild Dark Shore is available in print, audiobook, and ebook through the library system, and you can request this book or other materials through our online library catalog, which has the combined resources of Lake, Sonoma, and Mendocino County library systems. Requesting items is completely free, and items are sent to your local branch for you to pick up. And April is National Poetry Month, and the library is celebrating with events all month long. The first is a poetry event this Saturday, April 5th at 2 p.m. at the Lakeport Library, featuring Pulitzer Prize winning poet Forrest Gander. Gander won the Pulitzer Prize for Poetry in 2019 for Be With. He will read from his works as well as answer questions from the audience. Please join us for this event and show that Lake County supports the arts. We are celebrating poetry all month long, so please check out the calendar on our website for more events. Our website is at library.lakecountyca.gov, or come visit us at your local library branch in Lakeport, Clear Lake, Middletown, Upper Lake, or on the Bookmobile. Thanks again for listening to what's new and noteworthy at the library.
Thank you, Christopher. Any comments from the board? Public? All right.
Thank you, Christopher.
Bring it back
Thank
to the
you.
board, and thank you very much. 6.4, National Poetry Month, Poem of the Week.
I see we have a lineup of poets. If all poets could please come up with me. Not just a poet laureate. I see some historical figures.
I think this will bleed into the next one. This one's the actual Poetry Month poem, and then next is the presentation of proclamation. But I think it's fitting to have everyone up. And
So,
Supervisor Sabatier, they do the poem first, but it's good that you stand up with them first and foremost. Yeah.
Okay. Good morning. Thank you so much to the Board of Supervisors for having us. Happy National Poetry Month. The Board of Supervisors, I am Brenda Yeager, the Poet Laureate of Lake County from 2024 to 2026. And these are two Poet Laureate emeritus here with us as well, Georgina Marie Guardado and Richard Schmidt. Excuse me, I'm about to call him Richard. I also just wanted to give a thank you to the Board of Supervisors for supporting poetry and the arts. The Poet Laureate is a position that is supported by, and when you support poetry, I feel it's supporting the heart of humanity and helping us to feel our connection and find common ground with each other. And so I just want to thank you all so much for supporting it and for inviting me here today to kick off National Poetry Month. I'm going to read a poem by Joy Harjo. She is a Muskogee Creek, from the Muskogee Creek Nation. She was our National Poet Laureate from 2019 to 2022, and she was the first Indigenous poet to hold the position of the National Poet Laureateship. She is a beautiful force. And so I'm going to read from her poem, Conflict Resolution for Holy Beings. And I'm going to read it's a longer poem. I'm just going to read two parts of it. It does have an epigraph, which is a note about what inspired it. And this is the epigraph. I am the holy being of my mother's prayer and my father's song. And that is from Norman Patrick Brown, Dene, poet and speaker. And this is Conflict Resolution for Holy Beings, Part 1. Set conflict resolution ground rules. Recognize whose lands these are on which we stand. Ask the deer, turtle, and the crane. Make sure the spirits of these lands are respected and treated with goodwill. The land is a being who remembers everything. You will have to answer to your children and their children and theirs. The red shimmer of remembering will compel you up the night to walk the perimeter of truth for understanding. As I brushed my hair over the hotel sink to get ready, I heard, by listening, we will understand who we are in this holy realm of words. Do not parade, pleased with yourself. You must speak in the language of justice. Joy Harjo. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brenda.
Yes, I just wanted to open it up in case anyone wanted to comment about or come up and share anything about the poem that was read. Anyone on the board? All right, we'll move on to our next item, which is 6.5, presentation and proclamation designating April 2025 as Poetry Month in Lake County. Supervisor Sabatier.
Finally my turn. I kept trying to come too early. Thank you so much, and thank you all for being here. Thank you, Brenda, for reading your poem. Today we have a proclamation designating the month of April 2025 as Poetry Month in Lake County. Whereas National Poetry Month was launched by the Academy of American Poets in April 1996 to celebrate the integral role of poets in our culture and that poetry matters. And whereas National Poetry Month has become the largest literary celebration in the world, with tens of millions of readers, students, K-12 teachers, librarians, booksellers, literary event curators, I can't speak today, publishers, families, and of course, poets, marking poetry's important place in our lives. And whereas the County of Lake recognizes the contributions of poetry and literary arts for enriching the literary and cultural attributes of society. And whereas the County of Lake acknowledges the relationship between poetry and political freedom in the exercise of free speech in forms recognizable by people all over the world. And whereas the County of Lake recognizes that poetry represents one of the most enduring forms of expression and contributes to the historical continuity of civilization. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the Board of Supervisors of the County of Lake does hereby designate the month of April 2025 as Poetry Month in Lake County, passed and adopted this first day of April 2025, and signed by our Board Chair, Supervisor Crandall. If you don't mind, I'm going to add a few words. Poetry crosses many boundaries, from the ever-popular Emily Dickinson or Edgar Allan Poe. We've all had experiences with reading some of these things, and I think it's international, not just local. We obviously have our local poet laureates also that make an impact on what we see and what we hear. And the impact can be very real. There's an example, I believe it came from Rwanda, where there was some huge issues of sexual violence. No one wanted to do anything about it until a poet wrote a very daring poem that made people see things from a very different perspective and eventually created a movement to do something about this. Words matter, and when you put them to rhythm, people tend to listen more than just if you're talking. So poetry is very important to all of us. It's important to continuing to support poetry. Self-expression is something that we should all desire to excel at, and it's great to be among those that do excel at it already. So thank you, and if you would like to share any words.
I did want to say one more thing. If you don't know what a poet laureate is, I should have said that earlier. It is the poet in the community who advocates for poetry, organizes events, and there will be readings at the library. And this year we're also doing the Poem in Your Pocket Day project again. You'll see little baskets with little poetry scrolls on April 10th all over. And we'll have some here in the lobby as well. So please take a poem and share it with a friend. And I also want you to know we are currently looking for our Youth Poet Laureate, which is a national program. If If you know Amanda Gorman, who spoke at the inauguration of President Biden, we here in Lake County, we're starting a program. So if you know any youth who write poetry or interested in poetry, please have them get in touch with us and apply to be the Youth Poet Laureate. So hopefully next year, we'll be here with our next Poet Laureate and our first Youth Poet Laureate. You can go to there's a Facebook page, the Lake County Youth Poet Laureate Facebook page, or you can contact me through my website, which is brendayeager.com. So, thank you.
Any other words? Anyone from the board? Thank you very much. And then anyone from the public would like to come up?
Read one of your own poems?
I'll close public input, and I'll just say that, there's times, folks, not everybody's the same. Not everybody deals with things the same, and creativity is another way to accentuate how you feel during times of struggle and whatnot. When you look back throughout history, there were times when people couldn't speak out, or they would be abused or retaliated, whatever the case may be. But when you use creative thinking and poetry and art, you have a way to inspire others. And so I think that's why it's so important for these different, attributes, especially with poetry. So I just want to thank you all for keeping that alive. As humans, we have to express ourselves in different ways, and we have to allow others to be able to express themselves. So thank you for, giving other people inspiration to do these things. All right. Looks like we need to take a picture. I see Sam creeping up. Not in a bad way, Sam. I just. You mean creeping in a bad way? Yeah. No, you're creeping in a good way. Moseying up. How about that? We'll use that.
Yeah. Oh, this is nice. Oh, wow. I like these poses. Nice job. Thank you.
All right. 6.6, presentation of proclamation designating the week of April 6th through 12th, 2025 as National Crime Victims' Rights Week. And Vice Chair Rasmussen will be reading this proclamation.
Anyone who helps with victim services, please come up.
The Cape Crusaders. Good morning. Good morning. I'm very jealous of the kids. I don't know if it would look good on the front of it.
It would totally match that bright green.
Safety green is always my color of choice.
How you doing, Victor? Good. Yeah, you too.
If you want to climb up, I'll make some room.
Here. Come over here. Hi.
Here, we'll switch. Augie, you go right here.
It's impressive. We've got a couple of short girls in there from what
They are where they are by choice.
Looks like we have everybody.
Not about me.
A proclamation designating the week of April 6th through 12th, 2025 as National Crime Victims' Rights Week. Whereas Americans are victims of more than 20 million crimes each year, and crime can touch the lives of anyone regardless of age, national origin, race, creed, religion, gender, sexual orientation, immigration, or economic status. And whereas too many communities feel disconnected from the justice and social response systems and have lost trust in the ability of those systems to recognize and respond to their needs. And whereas victims of repeat victimization who fail to receive supportive services are at greater risk for long-term consequences, and the victim service community has worked for decades to create an environment for victims that is safe, supportive, and effective. And whereas the Victim Witness Division of the District Attorney's Office in Lake County serves crime victims daily, providing assistance and support for a variety of needs. And whereas the Victim Witness Division, along with state and federal agencies, is working to improve services to crime victims and to enact laws that ensure fair treatment for all victims of crime in Lake County and throughout California. Now, therefore, let it be proclaimed that the Lake County Board of Supervisors does hereby designate the week of April 6th through 12th, 2025, as National Crime Victims' Rights Week, and expresses their appreciation for those community members, victim service providers, criminal justice professionals who are committed to improving our response to all victims of crime so that they may find relevant assistance, support, justice, and peace. Passed and adopted this first day of April 2025 and signed by our chair, E.J. Crandall.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank the Board of Supervisors for this proclamation. National Crime Victims' Rights Week is officially next week, but it is a week to bring awareness to victims not only nationwide, but also to Lake County. As you can see, all of these people behind me for Lake County, they all stand here very dedicated to serve the victims. So if you are a victim, please feel free to reach out to us. There's a lot of support here, and there are a lot of people who want to help. So thank you.
Anyone else like to say a word? With that, I'll turn it back to the board.
Well, clearly we have superheroes in the room because you came with your capes, and you all are out there on the front lines every day, standing up for the people that need it the most, for those without voices and those without the courage and strength. So thank you for being their advocates and showing up for them every day.
Go ahead.
I want to highlight something. Obviously, echo the words that were just shared by Supervisor Peiska, the importance of the work, but I think that we all need to be aware of the issues that we're dealing with in funding this work. And that's an effort that needs to continue. It's been already transferred over from the feds to the state without knowing what the long-term remedy is. And we all look for public safety in our streets, and the only way we can get bad people off our streets and given the help that they need and hopes to rehabilitate is to give that comfort and that safety to victims to be able to be a witness, to provide evidence. And so this is not only important work, but it's important that we also continue to advocate for the funding needed to make this work continue, or else it will be very difficult to endure the public safety that we're trying to have. So thank you so much for everything that you do.
I'd like to thank you as well. A lot of the folks that are our victims, they can't be here to see all of the people that are here to help them throughout the county. There is a situation where there was complaints in one of the areas of my district, and we went out to go see this area so we can give the address. And the people that lived in the area were afraid to come out and tell us because of retaliation and because of the area. And that once we leave, or once the sheriff leaves, or once anybody leaves, they're going to go and and victimize them even more. And so it's really tough because at times law enforcement, all of you, your hands are tied, you know. And so I just want to call out to anybody watching, anybody here, that you know, we have to help each other. We have to, if you have a voice that can help for some of these folks, please help. You know, I know at times we get cynical and we say, well, you know, some people do this and it's unfortunate, but well, they put themselves in that position. Well, it's going to keep happening, and these folks that victimize people get more emboldened. So if you can help, we have to, in essence, do a lot of this on our own. For some reason, our law enforcement and you all funding, it's all put in a position where it's like a hand is tied behind our back. So we have to kind of do this on our own as people. So, you know, I just want to say that.
Okay, I'm going to just echo what my other colleagues have mentioned, and I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for all of you, to all of you. Thank you.
Is there anyone from the public that would like to comment? All right, anyone on Zoom? All right, Sam, I think we're ready. Okay. I get to stand next to the superhero. Yeah, we're doing another one too. So with that, it looks like we have another proclamation that's very, I think, in the same wheelhouse. 6.7, presentation of proclamation designating the month of April 2025 as Child Abuse Prevention Month. And Supervisor Pyska is going to read this proclamation. And so it looks like many of you are here for this one as well. So.
I love your soup, Brock. This is great.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
That's what I
that the
saw
Board of
letter.
Supervisors has ever approved that rather than an internal policy. How was it? I was looking stuff up this morning, and I talked to Maria last night about it, and I can't find a thing about it.
Yeah.
Like there's no specific methods on it, there's no specific guidelines, it's just
Only 100?
what it is on.
Open this letter for Monica. It was supposed to be an attachment. Oh, I tried it on my other computer.
Thank you. It's all magnetized.
Oh, fun.
I can't stick myself anymore. You saw something bad happen and you're like, we need to do better. They don't know how to put on a pin.
I couldn't open it from my other computer, but I opened it.
All right, we're starting April with the biggest pinwheel garden in the county today. Proclamation designating the month of April 2025 as Child Abuse Prevention Month in Lake County. Whereas approximately 3 million children are reported abused and neglected in the United States each year, and it is estimated that over 1,990 children die from child abuse and neglect in a single year. 5 children die every day from child abuse. 66.1% of all child fatalities were younger than 3 years old. 81.8% of child fatalities involve at least one parent of the children who died. 76.4% suffered child neglect, and 42.1% suffered physical abuse, either exclusively or in combination with another maltreatment type. And whereas child abuse prevention is a community problem, and all citizens should become more aware of the effects of child abuse and its prevention, and finding solutions depends on the involvement of the people throughout the community. And whereas effective child abuse prevention programs succeed because of partnerships created among social service agencies, schools, religious and civic organizations, law enforcement agencies, and the business community to support parents in raising their children in safe and nurturing environments. And whereas current local initiatives to prevent child abuse include a county-wide collaboration between Lake County Children's Council and Build Resilient Lake County, produce a comprehensive prevention plan, Adverse Childhood Experiences, ACEs, Overcomers Education, the Nurturing Families Program, Abriendo Puertas, Positive Indian Parenting, Differential Response, Redwood Community Services, and Lake County Office of Education Wraparound Services, Motherwise, Lake County Tribal Health Home Visitation Program, County of Lake Home Visiting Program, Lake County Lake County Resource Center Family Empowerment, and the Science of Positive, and so many more. Whereas events being held for the month of April this year are the Pinwheel Garden Challenge, Children's Festival and Advocacy Walk, Children's Memorial Flag, as well as child abuse information will be shared through different media for over a month. Other events recognizing April as child abuse prevention will take place later throughout the year. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed, the Lake County Board of Supervisors does hereby proclaim April 2025 as Child Abuse Prevention Month in Lake County and calls upon its citizens, community agencies, religious organizations, medical facilities, and businesses to increase their participation in our effort to prevent child abuse, thereby strengthening the community in which we live. Passed and adopted this first day of April 2025. This is a community issue, and the amount of representation we have from all of these different agencies and organizations and departments today speaks to your dedication to support the children of our community. So thank you so much, and I want to pass this over to Superintendent.
Well, children are the future. They're the future of this county. They are the future of this state. They are the future of this nation. And assuring that they all have opportunities to thrive is what we all do every day. And part of that means eliminating abusive situations for them. So all I can say is thank you to everybody on the podium here. Thank you to everyone at the dais up there, and thank you to everyone in the room for all of the efforts that we all engage in every day to assure that children have safe, thriving environments to live in. I think there are a couple upcoming events. Do you want to make sure that we put that out there? You're always the voice.
Welcome back, everybody. Thank you guys so much for putting on this proclamation. One year I would really like to say that we don't have to do this proclamation because we have ended child abuse. So that's ultimately, I think, everybody's goal here. But for now, we'll stick to recognizing Child Abuse Awareness Month. As you can see with the amount of people up here, this impacts everybody, and we would all love to see it end. So April is National Child Abuse Prevention Month in the United States, and this is an annual observance dedicated to raising awareness and preventing child abuse and neglect. It aims to raise awareness about child abuse and neglect and to promote community efforts to support families and prevent child maltreatment. This was also actually designated in April of 1983. We won't talk about how long ago that was. The theme for this year throughout the United States is Powered by Hope and Strengthening by Prevention, which emphasizes the importance of proactive efforts that support families, strengthening communities, and ensuring all children have the opportunity for a bright future. So this year our theme is Be a Hero, in case you haven't noticed our capes. So we are being a hero for ourselves and for everyone, because it takes everybody to be a hero in order to prevent child abuse. We are, of course, doing the blue pinwheels to symbolize health, happiness, and full childhoods that all children deserve. We do have many events that are taking place. We, of course, have the proclamation this morning. We have a proclamation this evening at the city of Lakeport. We have a little bit later, we have raising of the flag, which will take place at Lake Family Resource Center. We have another one this afternoon that will be at Lake County Probation. Then at the end of the month, we will have the closing ceremony, raising of the flag. It's the closing ceremony. Yeah, that will take place at the Lake County Sheriff's Office on April 25th. We have our children's festivals. We have on April 12th, we'll be at the park here in Lakeport. And then on April 26th, we have the Austin Park in Clear Lake. Throughout the month of April, there are placemats with winning art contests that will be displayed at Taco Bell in Lakeport, Judy's Junction, Pogo's in Kelseyville, Grandpa's Cafe, Barbecue by Biscotti, Subway in Clear Lake, and Cabo's. And we're also encouraging everyone to wear blue on Fridays in honor of children. Talk about the raising of the flag?
What the flag is.
The flag is for the missing child. So when you see the flag displayed up at LFRC, or is it staying at probation? You'll see them throughout the month. There is 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 5 children that are in blue, and then there's one that's in white, and that is the children that we have lost from child abuse. So it's kind of just a symbolization to recognize that we have lost children and that we're working our best to end that. Yes.
Add one thing. We do have the ability to put non-official flags on the courthouse. So we'd be more than, I mean, I'm just speaking for myself. I think the rest of the supervisors may agree that that would be an appropriate place to also hang the flag.
We might have an extra flag we can hand out. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak?
Oops, sorry.
Good morning, Rachel Dillman Parsons, Social Services Director. Just a few brief remarks, since we work in partnership with everybody here. Child Welfare Services recognizes every child deserves a life free from harm and neglect and abuse. We serve about 1,200 referrals for child abuse or neglect annually. About 70% of, let me pull up my stats. 70% of those reports involve neglect, which is often associated with substance abuse. Methamphetamine, fentanyl, and opiates are a problem with our newborns that we are aware of and attempting to address. And currently we have 85 Lake County children in out-of-home placement due to abuse. So it's crucial to understand that abuse and neglect is preventable, and all communities benefit when our children and families are well supported. When we invest in families, before crisis happens, we create a ripple effect of positive help. And that's what we're all here to do today, is support those families in partnership. So for our parents and caregivers, I urge you to seek the support you need. Don't hesitate to reach out. And for our community members, if you see something, say something. Let's keep our kids safe. You can give us a call 24/7 at 707-262-0235. So be a hero, Lake County. I love the theme. And also thank you to Samantha and her team for the capes.
Anyone else? Okay.
Anyone from the board? Vice Chair?
Yes, I just wanted to say, prior to this job, I spent 35 years in law enforcement in this county and unfortunately had to deal with many, many child abuse and neglect cases. But I had the opportunity to work with all of these organizations. Lake County has very committed organizations that are collaborative and very supportive and out here trying to care for the community. So I really appreciate that, and thank you, everyone.
Supervisor Sponte?
Can't help but be saddened every time that we bring this to the board. But in that sadness, I do appreciate being surrounded by so many people who are trying to make that change. So thank you for all the work you do. You are that hope that we want our children to see, who are unfortunately experiencing an atmosphere where that hope is not instilled in them already. So thank you.
Supervisor Owen?
Go ahead.
You sure?
Yeah.
All right. No, thank you for all the work that you do. I know it's, again, like I said, a lot of it in the last proclamation. I know many folks, this touches everybody, regardless of what class, whatever the case may be, what, ethnicity. There's always a situation where this takes place. And so there's not enough people that can handle this job, right? There's not enough people that can do this work. It's generational at times because, as you know, when a child is neglected or abused, if they're not taught, then they end up doing the same thing, whether it be verbal or physical or neglect, which is really tough as well. So I've seen and learned and studied my family's history and come from that. A lot of, boarding schools, inflicted abuse on my ancestors. And with so, there became neglect, shame, and all of those things. But that doesn't just go in through Native American, history as well. It goes through all sorts of different backgrounds. So just be cognizant. Everybody has a story. Everybody has a history. And this touches everybody some way, shape, or form. So thank you for the work. Thank you for coming forward and showing your support and how proud you are for doing the work. And I'm glad that we get to be here and honor you in this way. Is there anyone from the public that would like to say anything on Zoom? Yeah? No? All right. Well, I think Sam has everything ready.
There you go.
You can stand it.
All right. Go ahead and take a short break until 10, and we'll come back then.
Looking in the distance, fighting crime. That's the picture I need to see before the end of the day.
You got it.
We got you. Giving you a task. I have one of me, Ryan Martin, and Anita Grant doing that. We went to like a frog jump contest at social services.
Nice.
They gave us capes and I'm like, we can't leave without this.
We gotta do this. We gotta do this.
All right.
So many pens.
Welcome back from the break. We're going to go ahead and continue on with our agenda. Next is our 6.8, our consideration of appointment to Lakeport Fire Protection District Board of Directors. And it looks like we're looking for a continuance, but I'll give it to the Vice Chair so he can explain.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Last week, the Fire Board did an extensive interview process and recommended a candidate, which I agreed with. However, that candidate withdrew from the process after 10 p.m. last night. So I feel it's beneficial or important to refer it back to the Fire Board to see if they wish to recommend one of the additional remaining candidates before we do a final consideration. So I'm asking for a continuance to a future date, time certain, but not next week, but after that, hopefully within the following couple of weeks.
All right, any comments from the board? I'll open it up to the public if anybody would like to discuss this further or has a comment. Anyone on Zoom? All right, with that, we'll go ahead and bring it back to the board and look at a date to be determined. And so we'll address this at a later date, and we'll just figure out when you'll talk with the board and set that up, right?
They have a meeting next week on Tuesday evening, so I would just request that it be after the date of next week's meeting here.
Okay. Then we'll look at that. It could be maybe further out, but that's okay, whatever. All right. With that, we'll close this item and move on to our 10 a.m. 6.9, consideration of appeal AB 24-05 of Planning Commission's denial of major use permit UP 2014-14, Nina Star Farms LLC, Nevelina Bogdanova, applicant and appellant, location 23180 Shady Grove Road, Middletown, APN 004-006-1. And we have Director Turner here and Mary Claiborne.
Good morning, Mireya Turner, Community Development Director. I will turn over the presentation to our Senior Planner, Mary Claiborne.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, please.
With this being a public hearing, your board may want to swear in witnesses both in person and whoever is in Zoom.
Yes, thank you for that. Johanna, if we can do the swearing in, and anybody online, if you can turn your camera on or raise your hand or something of the like so we can get a confirmation that you're swearing in. And also in the chambers, if you're here on this item, please swear in if you're going to talk or have a comment about this.
Hold on, my computer decided to just restart right now. So let me, if Sam could promote me the panelist.
Sam, if you can promote Johanna, the panelist. Oops. No, I told him he should be doing it right now. Sam, did you promote her to panelist? Johanna? Oh, there you go. Okay.
Okay. If you're in Zoom, raise your hand to be sworn in. And everybody else, raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes. And then for the record, on Zoom, we have 4 hands up.
All right. And so they're preparing.
Good morning, Supervisors, Chair. My name is Mary Claiborne. I'm a Senior Planner with the Community Development Department. Today for your review is AB 2405, an appeal of UP 20-14 and IS 20-16, Nina Star Farms, applicant Nina Bogdanova. The applicant and consultant and their legal counsel are present in the Zoom room today. And they have also prepared a presentation for your consideration, should you wish for them to move forward with that. On December 12, 2024, the Lake County Planning Commission denied a major use permit UP 20-14 request for commercial cannabis cultivation consisting of 2 A-type 3B licenses for 37,446 square feet of mixed light canopy within a 48,529 square foot cultivation area and an A-type 13 distributor self-distribution transport only license. The site is located approximately 2 miles north of the Lake Napa County line and approximately 1.5 miles south of the Middletown community growth boundary. Although the Planning Commission did not refute the fact that the proposed project does meet all of the codified siting requirements within the Lake County zoning ordinance and state cannabis regulations, the Planning Commission noted a number of issues relating to siting of the proposed project. The appeal of the Planning Commission decision was filed by the applicant in a timely manner. The applicant appellant states the Planning Commission decision based on false and defamatory statements made by individuals from the public rather than substantial evidence provided as their reason for the appeal. The first issue raised by the Planning Commission is that the location is not consistent with the neighborhood character along State Highway 29 at Shady Grove Road, as the project is in close proximity to the Welcome to Lake County sign. The county code requires a 150-foot setback from Class 1 water courses and 100-foot setback from Class 2 and 3 water courses. The biological assessment by Pinecrest Engineering on February 2nd, 2020 states there are several unnamed and one named water course on site. Activities are largely proposed to be limited to the existing disturbed areas and will observe all required setbacks from the jurisdictional water courses. Potential code enforcement concerns were raised by the public on a separate parcel in question. As land use is site-specific, code violation concerns for this site have been addressed. Additional code violation concerns brought forward by neighbors were not for the project parcel. The neighbors stated the California Department of Fish and Wildlife had investigated the site. However, no documentation had been provided to support the claim. Additionally, CDFW, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, was notified of this project during agency review, and no adverse commentary was received. The project was applied for on February 5th, 2020. Staff visited the site on December 15th, 2023. At that time, several items for demolition and site cleanup were identified. CDD staff worked closely with the applicant and project consultant for a demolition permit for removal of an out-of-service hot tub, proper removal of the electrical installation serving the hot tub, removing of 2 trailers by a waste hauling company, and clearing of garbage and rubbish of the site. The permit was finalized by a building inspector on July 15th, 2024, following verification of site maintenance. Staff recommends that the Board of Supervisors approve the appeal or grant the appeal, overturning the Planning Commission's denial of Major Use Permit 2014 and approve the initial study, IS 20-16, subject to the findings in the staff report dated December 12, 2024, the memorandum dated April 1st, 2025, and conditions of approval in Exhibit A2. It is also important to note that we have received several comments. They did come in for over the last couple of days, and they are not attached to the record because they were not received within the 96-hour timeline. However, there is a comment of concern from a water district that should be viewed by the supervisors. And with that, I am open to any questions or comments you may have.
Anyone from the board have questions?
I have a bunch, but I was going to let everybody else go.
She can go first.
Go ahead.
Okay. Go ahead.
I just want to offer to, since this is an appeal, to hear from the appellant, maybe prior to asking questions.
That's a good idea. Thank you. Promote the panelist, or yes. Yes, and I know Justin had made an email, and so I'm just going to go ahead and address that email. He wants to appear and be seen on video, which is fine. During this time frame, he will be allowed to speak. He did ask during public comment to remain unmuted, but we're not going to do that. You can actually just write your rebuttals down, and we'll open it up to answer questions at a later time. We don't commonly allow people to refute anything back and forth. We're trying to keep this meeting moving in a good manner. In a screen share for your permission, screen share permissions for exhibits, of course, you'll be able to do that right now as we can hear from the appellant as we speak. So just wanted to go ahead and state that out, as we did receive your email and we are going to go forward here. And so when you're ready, Johanna. Whenever you're ready, sir.
I'm sorry, I thought you were speaking to Johanna. I was waiting for my turn. Thank you, Chair Crandall, and thank you to the board for hearing me today and for allowing and for considering my request. And I understand everything that the board has decided about that. Before I get started, I just want to ask if the board is if at this point the board is entertaining questions, or if I can go ahead with our presentation.
I think it would be more ideal for you to go forward with your presentation, and then we'll address questions after.
Okay, understood. Thank you. I will briefly introduce myself. Well, let me first thank the board for having me here today and allowing me to speak on behalf of Nina Star LLC. I think that they have a meritorious permit and a meritorious case for this appeal. My name is Justin Ebelar. I'm a California licensed attorney, and I represent Nina Star LLC, who is the appellant in these proceedings. Before I get into why I'm here today, I'd like to ask, and I think the board already addressed this, but just want to double check if I could be allowed a few minutes at the conclusion of the community's comments to rebut or address any particular issues that are raised there.
I think you'll be given the opportunity to answer questions and whatnot when we get to that point.
Understood. Thank you. As I said, I'm here today to appeal the Lake County Planning Commission's decision to deny Nina Star's major use permit that occurred on December 12, 2024. Our appeal is based on the fact that the findings of the Community Development Department, both on December 12th and more recently in the Community Development Department's memo to this board, indicate strongly that the project complies with Lake County's zoning ordinances and CEQA guidelines. And it's also consistent with the Lake County General Plan and the Middletown Area Plan. The reports are substantial, and they indicate a long history of about 4 years of work, both from the county and from Nina Star to ensure that the project meets the standards that this community has decided on through its zoning ordinances. My arguments in summary fashion are that Nina Star is in full compliance with the zoning ordinances, which is the criteria for the Planning Commission's inquiry as to the major use permit, that nothing at the hearing at the Planning Commission level changes or it influences the findings or conclusions that the CDD made in their report, and which was all of which were proper, as admitted by the Planning Commission on the day of the hearing. Thirdly, there were a number of zoning and environmental related concerns raised by the community at the prior hearing, at the Planning Commission hearing, but those concerns address policy issues that are not appropriate to be made or enacted at the time of a land use permit hearing. The purpose of the land use permit hearing is to determine whether the applicant has complied with all of the zoning ordinances that have been decided beforehand. That a new ordinance or a new rule related to a project, it cannot be made on the spot. It shouldn't be made up on the spot. It should go through the proper channels. And so if the community does have concerns about water supply or about water contamination that is beyond what's in the zoning ordinances, they obviously have a right to do that, to be heard on that and to do something about it. But the proper channel for that is the enactment of new ordinances or the amendment of a current ordinance that is insufficient to address their concerns. My last summary point here is that it's our position that the Planning Commission, while well-intended, was incorrect in its final decision. That the Planning Commission's decision lacked substantial evidence, which is a standard required for making its ruling, and that its decision was not reasonably related to the zoning ordinances that this county has decided should dictate the granting or denial of land use permits. I'd also like to join, in the Community Development Department's memo submitted to this body, and that's part of the record today. The CDD's report for the Planning Commission hearing and its memo reiterating that report was thorough. It was a 4-year project between the county. It was a 4-year endeavor by Nina Star and a 4-year investigation of Nina Star over the course of that time period, looking at every aspect of Nina Star's project and whether it complies or not. And Nina Star worked vigorously to make sure that when it comes time for the Planning Commission to review its application, that it has checked not only checked every single box, and it has made sure that its compliance is fulfilled. If there was something more it could have done beforehand, it would have done so. Everything that could have been done had been done. Lastly, another point is I understand this is a de novo review, which means this board has, I'm sure you all know, is able to review every aspect of this project. And so if the board does have any particular topic of interest or particular concern, I'm happy to address those, and feel free to interrupt me during my hopefully not too boring presentation of this case. I just want to I am a lawyer, so I would not be doing my job if I did not discuss the law to some extent, and I'll do so very briefly. The government code, section 65901, is what vests Lake County and every county in the state of California with the authority to hear and to decide applications for land use permits, such as Nina Star's major use permit that was denied in December 2024. Importantly, though, despite this broad granting of authority and the broad authority that the county has, when it comes to land use permits, those decisions they must be based on objective criteria established by zoning ordinances. Again, if anything is beyond that, the proper way, or if there are any concerns about the project that are beyond zoning ordinances, those need to be handled through the proper channels for either, as I stated, establishing or amending the current set of zoning ordinances. going back to fleshing out my first argument here, the project submitted to the county by Nina Starr, it complies with every ordinance, the general plan, the Middletown area plan, and CEQA, and those findings were disclosed in detail in the Community Development Department's report, and again in its memo, as well as its presentation here today. As I stated, it was a 4-year endeavor where Nina Starr had worked closely with the county, had received the county's concerns and corrections or findings of things that needed to be changed about the project. And Nina Starr took the efforts to listen to those and to bring the project, make sure the project is in compliance before the application is heard by this body. For that same 4 years, the county has investigated and reviewed Nina Starr's project, including all the issues that were raised by the county, or by the public at the last hearing, including water issues, compliance with ordinances related to the use of water, about contamination of water, and all the other concerns brought up by the county. Those were all addressed in a 4-year investigation where the county had worked with local agencies and had worked with Nina Starr itself to make sure the project does comply with those ordinances before, as I said before, the matter was heard. At the conclusion of those 4 years, the Community Development Department, in the most concise terms, issued a glowing report of the Nina Starr project, not only concluding that Nina Starr was in compliance with zoning ordinances, with the general plan, with the Middletown plan, but also describing in detail how and why, what basis they had for making those conclusions. The Planning Commission adopted those findings as part of its final decision. It didn't dispute them. As I'll get into later, I think the Planning Commission's decision was influenced by concerns for the community, which it should be. But I think those community concerns were beyond the scope of the inquiry for the application hearing. So in principle, if the Community Development Department has reviewed every aspect of this project, if they have reviewed the zoning ordinances, they've reviewed compliance with CEQA, compliance with zoning ordinances, and compliance with the plan, and they've determined, based on substantial evidence, that the project does comply or complies with the implementation of a mitigated negative declaration, then in principle, the only circumstances that could change those conclusions at the hearing would be if public comment raised a new issue or submitted a fact that was substantiated that would change those decisions. And I submit to this body that no such thing occurred. The public comment in December of 2024 did raise a number of issues, and unfortunately, some of them were false. I would describe them as I have stronger words for that, but I will say they were false. There was no evidence to support them. I'll give some examples, and I can walk this body through some of the particulars. For example, the public raised the issue that Nina Starr, or alleged that Nina Starr, had been cited by Fish and Game. They had been red tagged, that they had assaulted a person, that they were diverting water, illegally diverting water, illegally pumping water, and speculating as to the future, as to Nina Starr's intentions to comply with the laws if it's granted a land use permit. The County Development Department, following that hearing, as instructed by the Planning Commission, investigated those Fish and Game citation allegations and determined that there are none. The Fish and Game confirmed that. There's been no evidence of the red tags. There's been no evidence of criminal behavior or of the diverting water or of illegally pumping water. And Nina Starr vehemently denies those allegations. And I think this body will find that there's no evidence to support that, and that I won't comment on the motivations. There's could be many reasons for making those, including genuine belief. But the facts are that none of that conduct occurred. It's just unfortunate for Nina Starr that they spent 4 years putting the project together, and that if the Planning Commission's decision was influenced or based on those allegations, it is unfortunate and unfair to Nina Starr. Some of the other public comments at that December hearing included concerns about the availability of water, contamination of water. Those are legitimate concerns, of course. And those concerns are the exact reason why the government code granted authority to the county to enact its zoning ordinances, so that when issues such as water shortage or water contamination arise in a community, that they can be addressed, that an ordinance can be created that addresses the problem, mitigates it, or eliminates it by creating a regulation that requires companies like Nina Starr to comply with it. And that's the system we've had in place forever. So Nina Starr has relied on that system, reviewed the zoning ordinances, along with the county's review of the zoning ordinances, and made sure that as it stands right now, it has met the standards that the community decided upon for water shortage, water contamination related issues by enacting those zoning ordinances. Another issue that arose is that the community has concerns about a cannabis operation being located so close to the Lake County's welcoming sign. And like everything else in this project, Nina Starr worked closely with the county to address that concern beforehand. They agreed to a 500-foot setback and submitted a plan to show that the only building visible from the highway or from the road, excuse me, is one building, and that building is modeled after a barn. If the structure submitted was housing livestock or equipment, it would be a barn. The only difference between this structure the structure submitted by Nina Starr and an actual barn is that the use of that barn is for cannabis cultivation, which is lawful in this state and in this county, as long as the ordinances are complied with, and the laws, of course. Some of the allegations allege that the building is a monstrosity, and it disrupts the character of the area, and it cannot be masked by looking like a barn. I strongly disagree with that because there are similar structures along the road, and the visibility of the structure itself, with or without newly planted trees being grown to cover to obstruct the line of sight, is not anything like a monstrosity, and is in compliance with zoning ordinances and outside the county's defined scenic zone. Nina Starr worked with the county to make sure that was the case, again, before the project was submitted. I've submitted an exhibit to this body, and I believe it's available on the agenda for the public to view, that goes over the approach, both from the highway and from Shady Grove, to illustrate that the structure is set back, that any other structures beyond the one are outside of the view from the highway, and that the one structure that is in view of the highway is set in a manner that is not disruptive to the community, does not in any way indicate that there's a cannabis operation or a cannabis business conducting business there. It is an innocuous looking structure that does not disrupt the character of the community, nor violate any the scenic zoning ordinance or any other ordinance for that matter. And if the board will indulge me, I'll present that exhibit for everyone here today, as well as the public.
So how much more time do you need?
There's still a few matters to address. I would say I'm about halfway through, Mr. Chair.
Can we you're doing the presentation right now, right?
I am, and I can, if we can forego the walkthrough of the exhibit since it is in the file, and the board obviously has access to that at any time, and they can go through it on their own. And I can, if the board wants to give me a time frame, I can see if I can fit everything that's important into that window.
Yes, if you're ready, you can present.
Okay. I hope that on the screen, the board and the public here today can see the Nina Star's site plan. Please let me know if that's not what's appearing. This is the general site plan that's been submitted by Nina Star, and that's under consideration by the county today. I have cut out the portion where that shows the structure that's viewable from the highway and the road, and outlined how far away the structure is from the road, that it's outside of the 500-foot scenic setback, and that any other structures, such as the ones behind it here, are blocked by a tree line. And you'll see that'll become clear in the following slides. So this is the approach northbound from the highway, and we have indicated with red X's where the project could be seen coming from this approach. So the project is set back, as everybody knows, 500 feet under a set of power lines that's substantially far away from the highway and substantially far away from the road as well. It's in an obscure area that's generally out of the field of vision for drivers, and to the extent it is visible, it is consistent with the character of the neighborhood, because but for the activities that take place inside of it, its character is of that of a barn. Coming further down the road, you can see that trees, even the trees that are naturally there already, they obstruct the view, and that the setback is far away. Continuing down the road, just for everyone to see how far away and how limited its impact is on the scenery. In fact, it's in line with other structures that have been on their property, on other properties for some time, and are assumingly permitted by this county. Coming from Shady Grove, the project is still, as you can see, substantially far away from the field of vision for drivers going through this area. There's naturally trees there, and if allowed, Nina Star would plant more trees to further limit the view of its structure. So the last slide I will show you is the rendering of Nina Star's building. As you can see, painted red and white, solid walls with trees obstructing the field of view if the county allows for that. And its impact is minimal at best, and the extent that Nina Star has gone to in hopes of satisfying the community and of satisfying the county, that it will not change the character of its neighborhood, and that it will not impact the reputation of the community. Is beyond what is required of them. It's beyond what is required from the zoning ordinance. It's in compliance with the zoning ordinances, and Nina Star took it a step further to make sure that even though it's in compliance, it's also done in a tasteful manner. The building is constructed in a tasteful manner that respects the concerns of the community, having the project being so close to the county sign. Lastly, I want to review the Planning Commission's comments and conclusions from that hearing, because I think they're important, and I think they're telling of the merits of Nina Star's application. At the hearing, the Planning Commission expressed its opinions about the project, and had indicated twice that the application itself is not flawed. That is a quote, and that the application is much like other applications that are submitted that assumingly meant that applications that are granted. The comments that led to the county's denial included that it wasn't the right time and place, and that the Planning Commission had concerns about collaboration between Nina Star and its neighbors. Those are unfortunate conclusions for that hearing, because as I've stated repeatedly here today, Nina Star's project is in compliance with the zoning ordinances, and the fact that some community members dislike Nina Star or its operations, or the nature of its business, which is cannabis cultivation, a legalized industry in the state of California, is unfortunate. And those, as I've repeated a few times here today, those concerns are legitimate, obviously, because from any community member having a concern about the character of their neighborhood, those are important. However, the land use permit application process is not the procedure for addressing those concerns, unless those concerns are within the zoning ordinances, and as it relates to Nina Star's application and the information that was heard on December 12th, it is not.
All right. Does that conclude?
I'll conclude with just repeating my theme, in that Nina Star's application complies with every zoning ordinance, that the Community Development Department agrees with that position and has provided the substantial evidence necessary to support that conclusion of granting the application, and that the Planning Commission's conclusion lacks, while well-intended, lacks the substantial evidence necessary to support its decision, and that the Planning Commission's decision is not reasonably related to the zoning ordinances, and as such, it is arbitrary and capricious unless it is changed. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you. Anything else to add, community development? And with that, we will come back to the board to see if there's any questions for.
I have questions for it.
All right.
Okay. Okay, I actually have several questions. I want to say thank you for I think you guys have already, or Nina Starr has already started planting some cedar trees out that way. Is that correct?
I would have to confirm.
Okay. And she's not available for comment? This is her project and she's not available for comment?
Bogdanova.
Pardon?
Are you asking if Ms. Bogdanova is available?
Yes.
Yes.
She is not. I'm here to represent her and Nina Starr today.
Okay. That's interesting. Okay. I know that you guys, or that Nina Starr has, I had a lot of questions for her. I was wondering, I know that there's been some work done, and I was wondering the names of the people that have been helping with the project. Do you have any of those?
I know contractors were hired to help with the project. If it will help the board, and you, Supervisor Owen, make your decision, we can submit those.
Okay. The containers, there's a number of containers on the property. Do you know the number of them? How many of them are located on the shipping containers that are on the property? Do you have a number on that?
I do. I believe the number is around 20. And as Ms. Bogdanova had testified at the Planning Commission hearing, those containers hold the building materials necessary to enact this project if it were to be granted. And the intent is to immediately remove those containers as they're emptied and as their use becomes obsolete.
Okay, and have you emptied any of them to date?
No, they have not been emptied because there's no permission to use the parts inside.
Okay, I had seen some pictures with well over 24 containers on site from, a satellite image. So some of those have left the site, or is there over 20?
Over 20, but 24 would be about 24, and that would be consistent with.
Well, that was what was in the open. There was also some that you could see kind of up underneath some canopies. Permits, are there any permits that have been issued for those containers? Do you have permits from the county to have them on site?
We don't, because they're temporary. They won't be remaining on the premises.
Did you want to answer?
Maria?
Yeah, there.
If I may.
Yes.
So there was not a zoning clearance issued for the temporary storage sheds. There was a building permit, demolition permit issued for the 2 trailers that were on site that were removed, as well as the hazardous electrical that had been capped. There was a zoning clearance that was submitted with that demolition permit that also included those shipping containers on the site map. However, it was not listed within the scope of work in which they were submitting for.
So how many are, so are you saying that they are permitted? There was a little bit of confusion there in the way it was described. And how many do they have a permit for, if they have a permit?
So they had submitted for a zoning clearance with a demolition permit.
Yes, I
However,
understand
that was, the shipping containers were not included within the scope of work.
Okay, so
for
they
that.
don't have a permit for those shipping containers?
That's correct.
That's correct, okay. And is that in violation with the county's code to have over 24 shipping containers on the parcel?
We were considering those as temporary uses to be removed. We do have building permits for cargo containers for permanent use, but we were taking these particular cargo containers as a temporary storage.
So
to be
they
removed.
are in compliance with them, is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Okay.
There are no current violations of Chapter 5.
Okay. Let me see. The water. Now, my understanding is that there was a 43-foot well that was currently on the property when you purchased it. Is that correct? When it was purchased?
I will rely on the hydrology report that was submitted to the county.
Okay.
And
So
the findings in there, and
if I read that,
I believe I can defer to that.
Okay, if I read that correctly, there was a 43-foot well. It was tested in March of 2020. Excuse me. That was a heavy rain month, according to AI. I looked it up. And it was above average March rain year. And at that time, it was 16 gallons per minute, which it has not been tested during a drought year during the summer to say what kind of water it will bring. And as we know, there's a huge water shortage and availability in that area. And my biggest worry is that it's going to affect the neighbors and draw the water supply down for the people that are in that area. That's a huge, and I believe that Calliope Water has written a letter and submitted that as well with water concerns, and it's very poor amounts of water in that area. Many houses in the area currently have to haul water during the summer months, and of course, the amount of water that is going to be used by this large of a grow is going to substantially use up a great deal of that water, and it can affect the residents in that area. So I just don't see where it can supply the amount that it's going to require. Furthermore, the amount of water, there was another well drilled in 2021, which was 303 feet deep, and it only produced something like 3 gallons per minute. There are a number of neighbors near there that they might get 1.5 gallons per minute. And like I said, their wells go dry during the summer. So these tests, none of them that I've seen were done during the summer, during August, September. So this is a huge issue for the people in that area. The cannabis, as I read in your report, the average, and I'm assuming, though it does not stay, that seed, let me see, get back on track here. That should be, I'm assuming that seed to harvest is about 6 gallons per day. But that also doesn't include the summer months when we have less water. There's a water issue in that area, down that valley, and it will require more water during the heat of the summer, especially in this dry climate. And I'm new to cannabis, so I'm asking a lot of questions to people, nothing scientific, and I have been looking to find out if I could find something scientific online and haven't been able to find it. But I'm hearing that it can take as much as double that at a mature plant during heat peak, and that's when the residents are needing their water the most. So water's a huge issue in that area. Let me see. The scenic corridor, though I know that they're using the 500 feet on the scenic corridor as kind of what they're stating, we cannot find at this moment, I think it's a little bit ambiguous to state it's only 500 feet because we cannot find the documentation, and I've had some people looking for that, stating whether it is actually maybe 1,000 feet. There's not a definition to my knowledge on exactly what the scenic corridor, and I might be off base and you might be able to fill me in later with that, some documentation, but right now we can't find the documentation to define actually what the scenic corridor is. So is it further than 500 feet? Is it only 500 feet? We can't find the documentation on that. School buses. There's a school bus stop. There's a few school bus stops around that area, and this should be an issue. It can't be within a certain distance of schools. Kids are standing out there waiting for the bus, and it's less than 300 feet from the property. So that should be an issue. One of the things that it has stated in the application was that Nina Starr was the sole manager and the only person working on that property, yet there's been people talked to and seen other people working on that property. And in the application, it actually states, and I believe it's page 4, item A3 is my note, and it states that before having any other person come on the property to work, even subcontractors, that they'd be doing the background checks from the sheriff's department. And to my knowledge, that hasn't been done either. I mean, maybe it has, but we'd like to see that. And I know that there's people that have talked to people that they've seen on the property doing work. So again, in violation, in my opinion. Okay?
Just for our understanding, could you list what violation that is?
According to the application, she had stated, it's not, I guess the word violation might be wrong, but according to what her application is, she was the sole person on that piece of property doing 100% of the work. And they've testified that they have had subcontractors come on.
Like the ones removing the substandard
Well,
houses?
and bringing in the connexes from other jobs. I'm not sure where where the equipment came from. I'm assuming a different job, a different location, unless they have purchased it recently. Which wouldn't make sense to purchase it before you get the permit, so I'm assuming it came from another job. They claim that the equipment in the containers, the 24 plus containers that are currently on the property, they said it's full of cannabis materials to grow. So did they remove that from another piece of property that they were using it on to bring it to this one?
Our understanding is that those are temporary storage for the project.
I'm not
once it
talking
is
about
approved.
the Connex box, I'm talking about what's in it.
Right.
So
We're not aware of any cannabis cultivation activities taking place on this project site.
No, I didn't. There's been some work, for instance, the planting of trees and putting the connexes on and off.
We have no regulation in our current zoning ordinance that would prohibit contractors.
I understand that. I'm just stating that in her agreement, in her application, that she would be the only one there, and anybody else coming on the property. Let me find
The
it for
terms
you.
of this project are not actually in effect yet, so we wouldn't be holding that project to its conditions of approval or its project management plan until the permit is actually approved.
Okay.
So while you're looking for that, shall I let Supervisor Sabatier?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Supervisor Sabatier.
Thank you very much. Always difficult with these projects, and not exactly a fan of being told that I don't get to make a decision, that it's such black and white, but I believe these are discretionary and that concerns should be discussed and at least mitigated at best, or looked at different ways of approaching this. I guess I'll start with one thing that I'm really confused about. I'm really confused about the rendering. What is this red building that is rendered? Because here it talks about greenhouses being in the front that are going to be made of metallic skeletal framework and covered in black tarp. I don't see a red and white building. That looks more like the processing building in the back, so I'm kind of confused as to what that rendering is in the first place. It doesn't feel like it matches the site plan, where the site plan talks about looks like 6 mixed light greenhouses, and then in the back you keep going further, there's the processing building, which I'm assuming is going to be the red and white building, and then more mixed light greenhouses in the back. And in the rendering, I'm utterly confused as to what that building is. Can you help me out?
You're on mute, if you can unmute, sir.
Yes, Supervisor Sabatier, I can address that. And I'm happy to address Supervisor Owen's concerns as well as the rest of your concerns, but I will start with what you've asked. The structure in the rendering is a 90 by 60 greenhouse that was changed to a greenhouse because of the scenic zoning and as a part of Nina Star's efforts to comply with the scenic zoning concerns. It is the only structure visible from the road. From either road. The rest of the project is behind the tree line.
So I'm looking at the initial study, and the initial study, I believe, still has that original concept. So are you saying that the initial study doesn't, the mapping of the site plan no longer matches what's been done and that it's changed? Because I feel like the initial study still has the greenhouses in the front, and F is the processing facility, and that's in the back.
Supervisor Sabatier, there are 3 greenhouses. One is in the front, the rest are behind the tree line.
Oh, that's right. You did say so. There's no black mesh over it. It's a complete indoor now?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay.
Fully enclosed, Supervisor Sabatier.
And so that means we're not looking at mixed light. We're looking at indoor. Am I correct in understanding now what we're looking at?
That's incorrect. The intended use is mixed light, less than 25 watts per square foot, I believe.
Where are you getting the natural light? Mixed light typically means it's kind of like a greenhouse, and then you have added lights. Am I completely just missing that completely?
No, because the roof lets in the light, the natural sunlight, which is supplemented by the indoor lighting.
Okay. And that still takes care of the potential light pollution that we want to make sure and mitigate with our dark skies by having it that way and not having the black mesh over it?
Absolutely, Supervisor Sabatier. The structure includes interior blackout shades that prevent that address that.
Okay. I was just really confused by looking at the red and white building. It didn't match the description from the staff's comments on what we should be looking at and the colors and whatnot. Appreciate you making that. I do have some concerns about this project. Number one, I apologize to both staff and the applicant for this taking so long. Our process, I'd love to have it be streamlined. That's why we're working on a revised ordinance. Hopefully that will help out. But I know that some of you have probably gotten cross-eyed looking at this by looking at it so long, and thank you for all the efforts to try and make this work. And I apologize that my comments are maybe not helping in moving this forward. I have concerns about the hydrology report. I think that my colleague kind of hit on a couple of things. 16 gallons per minute in the middle of March. I would really love to see something that's more relatable to when there's the greatest need for water. Cannabis has a greater need during the latter point of its life stage. And we can go to dry wells on the California website, and that area is very historically infamous for running out of water. When I helped with my colleague, Supervisor Paiska, to create a water truck ordinance, there were some comments being brought to us from that region saying, what about us? We truck water, and so on and so forth. And so I know that that is a region that is very hard hit by any drought or end of season water access. And I'm going to remember the predecessor in the seat of District 1, Moke Simon, who also spoke quite deeply about the need for water out there. Hence why, in my experience at LAFCO, we've expanded the sphere of influence and annexed part of southern Middletown area to be part of Calliope Water because of that lack of water access. So I'm very concerned about it. In the hydrology report, it speaks to influence, but it doesn't, and you can see the circle of influence on the map, and I'm trying to get to that here. And it goes right over the creek, but never really identifies and talks about creek engagement as far as when you're drafting from the well, what is the impact to the creek. And obviously I'm seeing your radius of influence. It's 167 feet around your well, and it overlaps the entirety of the creek on that property. I think that for domestic use, we don't have any rules on this, and we don't have any rules necessarily for commercial, but I have concerns about the greater impact. And I believe that that is a fair argument to make, that when we see in dry wells on the state of California that red dots are popping in that region, and when we see that there is a well that has a proximity of, I couldn't even tell you, I tried measuring, but it's really difficult on that map, maybe 50 feet, maybe 30 feet, I'm not sure what it is, the distance from the well to the creek. What is the relatable influence of tapping that well in a hard to access water already for that area during the latter part of the cannabis life? And this is a indoor mixed light, meaning that they're going to do this most likely all year round and not just during normal times. And so I feel the fact that the report doesn't really talk about the impacts to the creek, that it omits it almost entirely, is a mistake within the hydrology report that I would like to see. During the reviewing the drought management plan, I've seen a lot of these, and I don't get to always express it because of this, because we don't get every single project to the Board of Supervisors. But a water management plan is not a drought management plan. I want to know what your plan is when there is absolutely a lack of water. And if your plan is to do what you do on a normal rainy year, that doesn't seem like we are trying to work together as a team with all neighbors, trying to figure out how are you going to be able to continue your business, and how are your neighbors going to continue theirs or have access to domestic water, because it's about all of us sacrificing together during those droughts, not just saying, I'm doing my best, I'm going to do the same thing every single year. And that to me is what a drought management plan is. It's about urgency of water availability, not how do you manage water on a daily basis. I also have my concerns about the high fire threat area that it's in and the bringing of 3,300 amps. The average house uses about 100 to 200 amps. And here we would be bringing what I see as a minor industrial use or a light industrial use to a very not very defensible area, and in its remap that just occurred in the past year or two is I believe in the orange scale, and I don't know, that's not high severity, but that's moderate severity, I'm gonna assume. And I just have concerns because of the semi-isolation of that area and the proximity to the closest fire station, bringing 3,300 amps. I would prefer that be a little bit closer to town, and granted, again, in the zoning, that doesn't say that you can't do that, but it's still a concern. And again, this being discretionary, our concerns should be heard and mitigated as much as possible. I have also some concerns that we are putting fertilizers and pesticides in a flood zone. I know it states that nothing will happen, but the rest of the property is available. So I'm not quite sure why we can't. Maybe it's for ease of use, proximity to where it will be used, but it just seems that we can deal with the problem better by moving it outside of that flood zone, since it is about 50% of the project is within the flood zone from that creek that's nearby. The scenic corridor, I'd like to see if we can have further conversations about this outside of here. I too do not see the 500 feet written anywhere. I believe we have what's called an overlay district, but within our GIS system, I can't find that overlay. I can just click on a property and it says it's scenic corridor, but there's nothing in the general plan that I can find. There's at least what I was looking at. There's nothing in the scenic corridor ordinance that identifies a certain number of feet from a scenic road that then the scenic corridor restrictions are taken away. And I'm not sure if that was something that was approved by the Board of Supervisors or not, but I'm not able to find it. And I would assume that applicants are probably not able to find it, or even the general public is not able to find it if it does exist. And so I'd love to see that if it does exist, or else maybe bringing it back to the board for review at a later time. Those are my main concerns at this moment in time. And again, I think the biggest one for me is water. I think there is a fair argument to be made.
Thank you, Supervisor Sabatier.
Well, 1 second. Did you want him to answer some of that, or did you were just making a statement?
I think those were mostly statements.
Okay.
The only question I had was my confusion on the rendering, and I got clarification
Okay.
on that.
All right. So we'll move on to Vice Chair. I think you were next, unless you had anything to add, Community Development, Maria.
Nope, we are happy to discuss the more of an internal policy regarding setbacks in the scenic combining overlay that we've sort of evolved over time with a number of different projects where there is not a clear delineation that is available in our APN books. Thanks.
Thank you. Go ahead, Vice Chair.
Yes, thank you, and I'll try to be brief since a lot of my comments were already covered by other supervisors. But I did want to mention that there was some information about some screening trees that were planted that have now died. So I would be looking for maybe an answer on that, what happened with that, when that is possible. And then I also had a question about the bus stop, if that was an actual concern. I know it came in as a community concern. But my biggest comments or concerns are the water issues. And in reviewing the hydrology study, we know that the yield cannot be estimated with precision because of all the uncertainty with the aquifer and the rainfall and those kind of things. And it does, state that per their calculations and assumptions, the project does have adequate water supply for the proposed irrigation use. That's if it's limited to the 1 acre and using drip line. I've reviewed a lot of community concerns and comments that have come in regarding water shortages in that area and the availability of water. Most specifically, the letter that came in late yesterday from the Calliomi Water District, which doesn't serve that area but is adjacent to it, which cites that their review is that the wells in these areas don't yield any more than 1 to 5 gallons per minute, which is far below what would be required to sustain a community water system in that area for residential use, not to mention additional demands such as cannabis or any other irrigation that might be occurring. So, with that person being kind of an expert on water in the area, the concerns that they're raising and citing match a lot of what I've seen in the community concerns. So I don't feel assured right now that that this would not have a negative impact on the environment, because if we don't have sufficient water, that could have a severe environmental impact on the people, the wildlife, the creek area, and those kind of things. So I'm concerned about the amount of water that the cannabis operation would take when there's already concerns in that neighborhood. So I just wanted to state that that's what I feel right now. I don't feel assured that there's less than significant impact on the environment. Thank you.
Anything to add?
Yeah, we just have the first two items Supervisor Rasmussen mentioned, screening trees dying. This permit is not in effect yet, so the screening trees or the visual screening is not required to be in place yet. So it'd be like a tree dying on anybody's property at this point. Once the permit is issued and that visual screening is put into place, which could include fencing, it's not limited to vegetative screening. As part of our annual site monitoring site visit, we do check to make sure that if they are using vegetative screening, that it is maintained in good condition. Secondly, no, there was never a provision made for setbacks from bus stops. Not when the board originally instituted this. We actually looked into it as staff just when we were drafting the ordinance, and bus stops change all the time. So it didn't seem a stable sort of effect, and the board did not ask regarding bus stops. They considered schools, and that was added, but not bus stops.
Thank you.
Supervisor Pyska?
I have a question about the hydrology report because it's not done by a hydrologist. It's done by an engineer. And that's not something that we typically see, correct?
Our ordinance has allowed licensed professionals, so that would include civil engineers. This is not the first expression of concern regarding a hydrology report done by other than a hydrologist. That's actually something that we're taking into consideration for the update to cannabis policy.
Yeah, and that is something that when we were looking at these appeals during the drought, we wanted the new ordinance to show cumulative effects and so we could better understand the aquifer and the impacts that projects will have to communities. And there was a dry well reported maybe on this site or a direct neighbor, probably in the last drought period because it's older. It's not a red dot, it's a green dot. So it's older. So that's my concern, is that I'm not sure. I would prefer to see this report would have been performed by a hydrologist, and we did talk about also having a neutral third party perform these tests so that we're not looking at a report that was paid for by an applicant for a specific result. Mm-hmm. So I think that's something that hopefully is coming up.
That is on our list, yes.
Okay.
These hydrologist reports, as they have been explained to us by a hydrologist, are by their nature extremely complex.
Right.
And since we do not have a hydrologist on staff, that is one of the items that I'll bring back to you in the upcoming summary of updating this. It would be hydrology reports performed by a licensed hydrologist and then reviewed by one that we will have on retainer.
Okay, thank you. Oh, and I'll just add, for the screening trees, I'm not really concerned about that. That's obviously, they didn't plant a species that was going to survive there because those are cedars, and cedars are not going to do well in that type of climate. So, it's just something to consider when you're doing vegetation screening, is look at the natural vegetation and see what actually works and can thrive there.
Supervisor Sabatier?
I apologize. There was one more thing that I wanted to make sure and mention, my concern for the fire. It's concerning to me that we're putting up new buildings and surrounding them by vegetation with a very close proximity. I don't know what the hallway around it was, but there's a wooden fence, 6 greenhouses surrounded by vegetation screening. And in my opinion, vegetation is great, but surrounding your buildings in such a way, in my opinion, goes against all the new rules and regulations we're trying to follow in defensible space and all of those things. So I think we also need to rethink how we request those things to be done in order to hide maybe some of the activities that are happening on certain projects. But it concerns me to put 3,300 amps and surround that by trees. That's just seems to kind of be counterintuitive in my own mind. So that just wanted to highlight some of my other specific concerns about that.
During the processing of this permit application, we received numerous adjustments and amendments and different renderings. When we do finally get boots on the ground, should this permit be approved, we will make sure that the actuality does resonate with or does reflect the Zone 0 and the fire hazard mitigations.
All right, anything else?
Nope, go ahead.
All right, did you have anything to add to that, sir? Or did you want to address anything that's been stated after comments from the board? I think he's good. All right, so I think a lot of what I had questions about was already addressed. A lot of it was. I have this question, and I actually found it through one of the documents I had, and it seems that we have at least 70 or so, I may be a little off, it's a couple months old, of projects that involve cannabis. And I know that's also why we're trying to work on the ordinance. And community development has the purview of doing that work, which is quite a bit. And lately, as of late, we've had many of these appeals. We have had a lot of things that come up and haven't been addressed, or have been addressed, or may be an issue now that weren't back when this was passed and whatnot. And so I know what it takes for your department to go through all of this work, and it's in line with what's been passed already. And so I know that the department at times is given, it's thought that the department's trying to favor a project or not, which isn't the case. I use the words of the late Bob Malley, who I served with on the Planning Commission, who he was against cannabis. Yes, he was, but he had to vote for projects a lot of times because he said it was the rule of what was being passed. So I just have to state that, because I know a lot of times, because of the way things are lately, that has to be said, I feel like. And so I know for me, I'd like to, I know that with hydrology, I like that you mentioned how an engineering firm conducted it, and how we talked about water management before rather than drought management, which I see it in here because there's a lot of conditions of approval. I think a lot of times there's attempts to address these issues through the conditions of approval. And so I know that there's so many different things I don't want to get in a rabbit hole about with hydrology, like peer reviews and things like that. And so I really want to emphasize that I think, this may be a little off, but you can stop me, Lloyd. I really would like to just address what we have in place now when it comes to permits, and kind of have a situation where we're not really bringing these forward anymore until we get that addressed and the ordinance addressed, because we're here at these consistently putting more time and more things on your plate, and having to do these and whatnot. So I just want to emphasize that, and I don't know if it's okay for me to say that, Lloyd, but I have to state that we're going through these, and it's just becoming consistently, basically appeal after appeal and things of that nature. So I don't know, I'm just saying that, and I have a lot of other things, but I'll let the public go first. But I seen you bring the microphone forward, so I'll go ahead and give that to you.
Just so I understand correctly, you are expressing interest to see if there's board interest in putting a pause on processing any further cannabis applications.
This one, I know we're here at it, and I don't want to stop this one at all, but I really would like to see that, so that we can, we're just going to have another appeal, and after appeal, and after appeal, and it seems that the ordinance can be something that will identify some of these things. But Lloyd, go ahead. I see Lloyd turning this.
That particular item might be on a more broader scale for if you were to compare it to what's before your board today, which is just the appeal coming out of the Planning Commission's decision. But staff can certainly, within staff, can certainly look into those options, and that may culminate in a presentation to your board as it relates to those possible options, a pause of sorts on applications in general and the degree of that. Staff will internally look into that.
We do have a summary coming within a month. I will make sure that options are included in that item.
Thank you. No, it's getting to a point where we're just having appeal after appeal. I hear a lot of the concerns and the complaints, and then on vice versa, we have, the appealants giving their, their testimonials and their rebuttals and whatnot. But I mean, like, looking at something like, the bus stop and the cannabis project being in a specific spot. And I mean, people are going to take what I say for whatever they assume it is. But I mean, we have grapes, and we know those grapes aren't eaten. They're not food. They're for wine. And alcohol kills more people than cannabis. And I don't use cannabis, but there's also the Right to Farm Act, which allows you to grow hemp. Is that going to preclude somebody from growing it outside of the, the zone and whatnot? So I get frustrated at times that it gets further than where we are with what's intact. I just felt the need to say that. I think I'll stop there and allow the public to speak.
Clerk Crandall, if I can interrupt, if the board would allow me to address some of the concerns raised.
I think it'd be better because the public will probably have a lot of the same things. And like you asked, if you could speak at the end, we'll go ahead and give you that opportunity then. All right.
That's fine. Thank you.
If there's not anything else from the board, we'll go ahead and go from there. So if you're here on this item from the public, please state your name for the record and make your statements.
Good morning, Chair Crandall, Vice Chair Rasmussen, members of the board. This is actually not a public comment, but more of a point of order and a question. Ms. Claiborne mentioned that there were several public comments that were not submitted because they came in within a 96-hour period. However, I understand as an appellant, having been an appellant, I have to submit my material within 96 hours, but I understand the public is on a different time frame. And I do know that some of the public did submit comments well in advance of 96 hours, and they weren't published. So it's kind of in a catch-22, if my understanding is correct, that the public has until the day before the hearing to submit a public comment. But now we're being told it's 96 hours. It would be nice if there was clarity, and that clarity be posted on the website, especially if Granicus isn't made available until 96 hours. So I don't know if there's a question that can be answered. So, thank you.
All right, you finished?
Yes, I am.
Okay, sir. I don't know if you wanted to go first or go ahead.
Materials that we did receive in community development were forwarded to the administrative office, whether or not they were, and so I would defer to them. Thank you.
All right. I didn't know if, Lloyd, if you had anything or AO.
Just as a supplement to what Director Turner said, under Article, I believe it was Article 58 of the county's zoning ordinance, it does reference that this public hearing, in addition to being de novo, all interested persons may appear and present evidence to your board for your board's consideration.
Supervisor Sabatier.
I know that I don't believe I'm alone. We all received a whole lot of correspondence, and that was received, that was read, and yeah, I just want to at least make sure to recognize that that was, thank you for your correspondence.
Not to mention it was postponed as well, so we've received a lot of those from the week before, and then we wanted to make sure that Supervisor Owen was here as it's in her district, so I'm only stating that because I know there's been more time, like you stated, and I have received a lot of the comments. I'm sorry, I didn't see your pen.
Well, just
with the other pen over there.
Just quickly to echo Supervisor Zapata, yes, I had mentioned in my earlier comment that we got a lot of comment, and I reviewed those. One of the things that could cause them not to be on today's record is if people are sending them to just supervisors. For example, yesterday evening, the clerk doesn't have time to get those in the record when they come in that late. That doesn't mean they're not.
I can speak to as far as.
Yes, please.
Yes, all the comments that were forwarded to me via email from the supervisors, I will put them all in one document and post them after the agenda today. And I encourage people to use e-comment because all the supervisors receive that immediately right when you click send, and the public gets that as well. So via email is not the best route, but we will get them on the agenda. It just won't, if it's on Monday, like afternoon, it'll be after the agenda because it's a process to get it posted to the agenda. Thank you.
I think one thing I'll add is being a part of many appeals and things of this nature. There have been tactics where people submit things at the last minute. I'm not saying anyone here has done that or anything like that. I'm just giving you history that I know. There's been attempts to continue or something of the like. It becomes one of those situations, and I've seen it in the past on either side of whoever's pro or con in that situation. So just mention that as well. Is there any other public comment here? Or? Okay, one up, Margot.
Good morning, Supervisors. Before I go into my comment, I wanted to respond to the suggestion about using Granicus first. I thoroughly endorse that recommendation. If we could have the ability to attach a file, that'd be great, because I've learned the hard way. I hit hard that 2,500 word or character element, and then I lose my entire public comment. So if we could find a way for the public to attach a file, that'd be great. Thank you. Okay, and to my public comment. My name is Margot Kambara. The Planning Commission ruled correctly when it unanimously denied Nina Star Farms major use permit. By denying the permit, the Planning Commission protected the county from liability and possible litigation. The Planning Commission's decision is correct on 9 additional points. First, the permit application's mitigated negative declaration, MND, is flawed. It does not acknowledge nor address negative impacts identified by neighbors regarding water supply. Second, the neighbors' concerns meet California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, threshold. A fair argument and mitigation must be addressed if the permit is approved or appeal granted. Third, the MND does not identify sufficient and enforceable mitigation. Fourth, the project's piecemeal approach violates CEQA. Fifth, the initial study -MND has incomplete data. Sixth, an unlicensed person may not prepare project planning and design documents. The project documents lack the required signature and engineer's stamp. Seventh, the project site plan is not signed and stamped by a licensed engineer as required by law. Eighth, cumulative impacts, for example, traffic and water usage, are not analyzed as required by CEQA. Ninth, project violations have been committed. The project site does not have a permit for shipping containers per a Public Records Act request completed last week. Neighbors describe other violations by project personnel. Other CEQA factors. According to CEQA, when a fair argument can be made that a project may have significant effect on the environment, an environmental impact report, EIR, must be prepared, even if evidence to the contrary exists. The fair argument standard is low threshold test for requiring the preparation of an EIR. It is a question of law, not fact, whether a fair argument exists, and the courts owe no deference to the lead agency's determination. The neighbors to the project meet the fair argument standard. The project will result in significant environmental effects that have gone unidentified and unanalyzed in the MND.
If you can wrap up.
Neighbors have described the history of wells going dry and having to truck in water. The neighbors provide ample substantial evidence, not limited to mapping, photographs, local observations, and information. I thank you for your time and your consideration, and I urge you to find as the Planning Commission has found and denied this permit. Thank you.
Thank you. Ann?
My name is Nanette Donato, and I live 1 mile south of the proposed grow. I am ceding my 3 minutes to Tara, who will speak, and I have some handouts.
We don't really do that, but so if you just want to speak, you can finish your 3 minutes, and then she can do her 3 minutes, and you can do yours. Go ahead, grab the handouts, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Board of Supervisors. Thank you for hearing my spiel. My name is Terry Ibarra, and I actually grew up across the street from Shady Grove Road, and I still have family in that area today. And I would like to state, I'm not opposed to cannabis in Lake County. That's not why I'm here. But location really does matter, and I really do think that this is the wrong location for this project. Really based on all of the concerns that you've already heard. The Nina Star Farms project is located along Highway 29. It is a designated scenic corridor right next to the Welcome to Lake County sign. I just don't think that as people are entering into the county, that that should be the very first thing that they see. I do understand that they are planning on covering the area with groves of trees and things, but obviously they did not do the research, because I know that they didn't purchase those trees to put in to let them die intentionally, even though I know that they don't have the project started and they're not going to start worrying about watering everything, but you don't make that purchase without intending it to survive. They didn't do the research for the agriculture of the area to keep those trees alive. And I feel like that kind of says something to their character for what they're planning to surround the area. And as Mr. Sabater had mentioned, having those trees in that close proximity to the building is a real fire concern. It does not, oh gosh, what's the word? It doesn't allow for the defensible space. And that area, we are 10 years from the Valley Fire. That area has not burnt yet of Lake County. And it's a growing concern every single year for those residents, especially when they run out of water. And where are they going to get the water to be able to defend that space during those driest drought portions when we are at the highest risk? Having an industrial grow and increasing that traffic, it really does raise the fire risk of that area. And that area, I can attest from my family members, the way that they get defensible space there is by having helicopters come in and drop, and that's not very precise. And they don't have access roads for fire trucks the way that other areas do. Now, also, the school bus situation. Yes, I understand that school buses will change their drop-off and pickup locations. I can attest for myself, knowing that area has not changed in excess of 35 years. That's because I went there. I took that school bus. That area, I don't see the probability of it increasing. Do I have to finish up?
If you wrap up, yeah.
The hydrology report says that it produces 16 gallons. We mentioned that at only 3. That's only 4,300 gallons per day if run 24/7. And they need 5,000 gallons per day just for their production. That's for the construction phase. The water sphere does impede on the creek. They said they wouldn't take from the creek.
If we can wrap up.
Yes, sorry. Thank you for hearing what I had to say, but I really think that we need to consider the water, consider CEQA, lack of transparency, and the pressures that they put on the other residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Did you? Okay.
I'm Charles Morris. I'm with Santa Elena Creek United. To get straight to the point and get past the other part, we agree with everything in the letter and with what Math has gone through and has tried to do, and it's all in Monica Rosenthal's letter that was sent to the Board of Supervisors. We were created basically under pressure in a similar situation like this. Our founder was Dwight, who is the conservationist of the year of 2017 by Lake County. None of this is what's happening is work. We are a nursery. We are a nursery for fish and wildlife. We have had to use water from our creek to stop a fire in 2017 from taking us out. That's why we didn't burn. And my hat's off to Moak, because Moak went up there personally and fought the fire with everybody else. We can't afford that. The problem we have is we have the rights and we are expected to be good stewards, okay? Sacramento Superior Court case 515766, we're in that case. We fought for that. And we know we can go to Solano County. Solano County has come to our creek. They've looked at us and said, you guys are good stewards, okay? Nobody has taken any chance to do that. Our neighbors, they feel threatened by this, and they know that the fish feel threatened by this, because this is a nursery. We literally, if the water goes up above 60 degrees during the hot season, we literally have to go grab those fish and take them to a place where the water gets below 60. And generally that's right there on my property on Hildebrand Road, right there by the bridge, okay? We don't like to say that because we don't need a bunch of fishermen coming over here and getting our fish. We want to see those fish make their way back to Lake Berryessa, and we would love to see the salmon someday be planted in there so that they can come from here all the way to where Chief Solano started this whole thing with our water rights, and they can make their way back to Sassoon, Vacaville, and all of those places and make their way to the ocean. I would like nothing more than to see more water than less. I don't see any reason why this should be granted based on the fact that it's not going to help us, it's going to make it worse. And I would much rather be walking around the creek at, in the summertime, getting those fish to where they can survive. And so I want to see more water, not less. And I'm hoping that you can stick with the spirit of Chief Solano and everybody else, and that those fish can go back. We haven't had a salmon run since the 1950s. I would like to see that happen again. I know the Native American community is behind that, and most of the natives on that creek are behind that. So we would like to see that happen. And the last part is screaming eagles and fish. They are impacted by cannabis like everybody else. Okay, that's all I got.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chair and Supervisors. My name is Monica Rosenthal, and I believe you did receive a letter from me. But first, I'd like to review a couple of things in the letter that I believe you also received from Todd, the General Manager of Calliope County Water District. As he stated in his letter, the yield that put on my glasses, I'm sorry, I could read this better. But that some of the wells there yield only 1 to 5 gallons per minute, far below what would be required to sustain a reliable water supply for residential use, let alone additional demands. He goes on to say, of course, that you should consider this project carefully because without first conducting a more extensive hydrological a study to confirm adequate and long-term water availability risks exasperating and the existing strain or putting more strain on the local water resources. Now, I am a farmer, so I grow wine grapes. I have 20 acres that is located near this, I'm north of this location, but I have one of those low-performing wells. I have, as I said, 20 acres. I have 9.5 acres of grapes on my property. We have a domestic well that, again, fits right into the description that Todd has laid out here for you. I don't have very many trees on the property because I don't have the water to water those trees. Again, as I said, I have 9.5 acres, but how do I take care of that, the crop and my home, and supply water and not affect my neighbors? I have a pond on the property. That's where I have my water. I have both riparian and appropriative rights to that water. The appropriative rights end March 31st. Beyond that, there is no time limit on the riparian rights, and I'm telling you this because this is where I do have part of my property also includes a creek where I have access to that water to keep my pond full. However, as I said, there is the appropriative rights end March 31st. There is no time limit on the riparian rights, but the use of that water has to be beneficial and not harm anyone or anything else. I cannot dry up the creek. So with that, again, I really, and in my letter, as it said, that there is, and has been discussed here today, that the hydrology report that was supplied in regard to this project is rather limited, and the analysis is not sufficient to properly evaluate or provide for the safety of the community and surrounding areas. The project does not meet the water resource WR, or the goal WR1, to provide the current and long-range water needs of the county and provide the protection and of quality and quantity of groundwater resource. So again, I'd like you to consider that. So the other comments that I have,
Your 3 minutes.
was that my time?
Yeah, so if you want to wrap up.
Okay, no problem. The other comment that I have is just that I am concerned about the layout of this particular project. It has changed many times. I don't know where this tree line is that the buildings will be hidden behind, but anyway, that's a concern as well. What is this project actually offering? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
I've been asked to speak. My name is Nanette DeDonato. And the first thing I want to address is that one of our volunteers in our group here, Beth Kershaw, who is traveling at the moment and couldn't attend, she submitted a protest and received a letter from, it may have been the previous attorney, asking her to withdraw it. In no uncertain terms, and that may violate California's anti-SLAPP law, which protects the public's right to participate in local decisions without intimidation. She feels intimidated, and many of the neighbors feel the same, have the same feelings, and so that is a big concern with us. Next thing I want to address, to continue what Charlie Morris said, the wildlife report, we now have bald eagles, we have several bears, a male and a female bear, we have cougars, we now have the water, gosh, I can't think of the name of them again, that have come back, and we have not seen them for quite a few years, the river otters, and so they have come back because we have a little more water now. We want them to stay. We have seen a lot of minnows and things in the creek. I personally have had the creek dry up. I live a mile from the creek, and during the drought, we had to buy water. We had to have it brought in. And then the last thing I want to address is the shipping containers, which were in your packet. She mentioned that it was temporary. They've been there for 4 years. That doesn't sound temporary to me. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Any other public comment on Zoom?
Does that include me, Chair
One
Crandall?
second, yeah, no. Okay, if there's no other public comment in the chambers or on Zoom, we'll go ahead and bring it back to the board. And yes, go ahead, sir. You can close out with your statements and briefly summarize those, and that way we can get back to and get forward to what we need to do from here.
Thank you, and I will be brief. Our main submission is this. Whatever the laws, regulations, and ordinances are, Nina Star will comply with them, and that's what they've done for the past, this is what they made sure is done for the past 4 years. The policy concerns about the way hydrology reports are submitted or the criteria within them or the shortages or otherwise that are not addressed by the ordinances are outside of Nina Star's control, unfortunately. And if those ordinances were to change, or if those would have been enacted prior to the submission of the application, Nina Star would have made sure to comply with those. And as far as the law, what Chair Crandall alluded to, you know, whatever our thoughts are, all of us, about the way things are, at the end of the day, the laws, what must be applied, and the laws that the zoning ordinances control the permit application process. Just three more short points and I'll conclude. As to the hydrology reports, there's a lot of concern about that. Today, I want to reiterate that the hydrology report submitted is in compliance with the ordinance. It was submitted by a qualified expert, Vanderwall Engineering. And if a hydrologist had been the only qualified person to bring that report, then Nina Star would have complied with that. But the hydrology report as it is in compliance. And if you check the hydrology report, you'll see that the Nina Star is separate and less impactful to the water supply. And the fact that Nina Star's greenhouses are fully enclosed is actually beneficial to the water supply because less water is used any time of year. In regard to the utility or the amperage issues, I believe that is a utility controlled matter, and Nina Star, of course, would comply if the utility company has to change anything about that to ensure that the community's fire safety is addressed. Something that I think is important to bring up as well is the mentioning of the bus stops and their location, their nearness to the Nina Star business. Nina Star would have no problem whatsoever regulating its operations to accommodate that, to make sure that there's not business activity around the time when children are picked up or dropped off, or other school activities are taking place nearby. That's an important concern for Nina Star, is that the children are protected and safe. In regard to the fires, that seems to be another important concern today. The fire department reviewed this property a number of times, and they have not found any concerns with how it is as of now. And if something were to arise, that's just like everything else in the past 4 years, Nina Star will address that head on and bring itself within compliance if it's ever out of it. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to listen to me today, and appreciate you hearing me as well as the community hearing me, and thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there anything else to close with, Director Turner or Mary? No? Any other comments from the board? If not, then looks like we're ready for action, I suppose. Supervisor Sabatier?
Just a quick comment. I do disagree with maybe the language utilized by our planning commission. I know that some of it had to deal with they don't feel it's the right thing to be on a property that has a welcome sign, and I don't think a scenic corridor is meant to be a restriction of that kind. And in my opinion, if it was outdoor versus grapevines or cannabis, now we're going to pick which plant we want you to have on your property and what's appropriate. Like at that point, we are getting way overreaching. So I think that we need to, it appears based on the conversations we've had, I think we need to be appropriate in our reasons as to why we are moving forward. Because I don't feel that the statements made by the Planning Commission were, in my opinion, compelling enough and strong enough versus what we are able to do here today with our appropriate motion.
You know, and I think I'll say one more thing. I do appreciate the sentiment about, you know, the salmon for other reasons. We won't get into that. just the actual mention about them surviving with below 60, cooler water and whatnot. But, I do like the fact that we're bringing up, the animals and the environment, water and whatnot. But, I'd like to see others take heed to this because I've had other projects where folks will come forward and be upset that we're looking into these issues as to why the project's not moving faster, and I'm not blaming any of you for that. I'm just making this statement because it's going to be on record, because there's going to come another time where someone comes forward and says, why are we worried about that? What's the issue? Why we're missing out on economic development, this and that. And it's like others or anyone use these types of things, in these situations. And it's just, I just want to be consistent, that's all. And I appreciate those statements. I appreciate bringing up Native Americans and cultural resources and things like that. And so that's just the statement I wanted to make. Thanks. Whenever you're ready.
Okay. I have a question about the building itself. So you're using mixed lights, so starting at the ceiling, or do you have like sheer panels that the light can come in?
Supervisor Owen, we're using blackout shades.
On the ceiling?
That's correct.
Oh, okay, so it won't be mixed light, it'll all be electrical lamps.
They're removable, so they can be placed on and placed off.
Okay, so when you take them off, is that open air where the odors can get to the neighbors is what I'm getting at?
No, Supervisor Owen, it is not. The building is fully enclosed, and so it is closed air, or it is fully enclosed. It's not open air,
Okay.
And every measure possible has been taken to reduce odors, including carbon filters.
Okay, well, I'd read about the carbon filters, but that's why I was unclear. The floor, what type of flooring do you have in the building?
It's an impermeable floor, concrete.
Concrete, impermeable. Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Supervisor Owen.
With that, if there's no other comments, I think we're looking for action.
As a suggestion, because it's not my district, but we've all been talking a lot about water, and I think that there is not enough information, and I believe that we should utilize that inability to make an informed decision on the true impact to that community, and there is a fair argument to be made, hence the denial of the appeal, just to try and help it along.
And I second that.
Lloyd?
So,
You can help us with that.
Yeah.
thank you, Mr. Chair. So, for purposes of your board's motion, as it relates to this appeal, if your board moves to deny the appeal, and in line with what Supervisor Sabatier referred to, the motion, your board may move to deny appeal number 24-05 and direct staff to prepare findings of fact. And the denial of the appeal, in particular, since the water hydrology issues were raised, for your board's consideration as part of this motion, the denial of the appeal would be based on your board disagreeing or disputing with the findings that were made in the December 12, 2024 staff report, in particular page 23, item number 4 for the major use permit findings for approval, which does reference the water supply issue. And that would be the basis for a basis for the denial of the appeal. Also for your board's consideration, if there's any other grounds for the denial of the appeal that you see in this particular page in the staff report, your board is welcome to incorporate that. And the reason why I'm laying this all out is for purposes of the your board's intended decision that will then culminate within 45 days of a draft findings of fact and decision that would incorporate these grounds.
Okay.
Can she say so moved?
So that would be the
If you don't
motion
wanna
itself,
add
unless your
anything.
board wants to.
No, I would like to add the school bus stop. I know that it's not in there, but it is a,
Supervisor's about to, one second, Supervisor Owen, go ahead.
No, I want to rebut that comment, so I'd prefer that she finish her comment.
Oh,
Or I
okay.
rebut.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Supervisor Owen, sorry about that.
okay, and I know, I just wanted to throw in there about the kids, the school bus stop, keeping it far enough away, and you can go ahead and rebut it.
And so I don't disagree that the perception doesn't look good to have a cannabis grow right next to a bus stop, but that is not within the purview of our ordinance where we can use that as a reason to deny. And I would prefer that we not put anything that we are tweaking our ordinance on the fly in order to deny something, because I think that would be inappropriate for us to do that today.
Okay,
I don't disagree with the comment, but I don't know that it would hold water to put that on our document of findings.
Okay, thank you.
And I have to agree with Supervisor Sabatier on that exact point.
All right, with that,
And
County Council.
with those findings mainly, again, item number 4, page 23 of the December 2024 staff report, which refers to the water hydrology as the ground for your board's proposed denial of the appeal. Your board may make the motion so moved.
Okay,
So moved.
so moved.
If you agree with what was
Yes.
stated.
So I have a motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to deny the appeal with what was stated by County Council. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. Motion carries 4-1 to deny the appeal. With that, thank you, Community Development, for your report. Thank you, public, for coming forward and giving your statements. And thank you, sir, for representing and being here on Zoom to give your statements. I'll bring it back to the board. Is there anything else you wanted to add? Sorry. CAO,
I would
Yeah.
recommend, and I apologize, Ms. Turner, I would recommend that we take up item 7.3.
all right. So we'll look at 7.3 briefly, and then we'll come back to you after that. 7.3, consideration of letter of support for HR 1383, the Secure Rural Schools Reauthorization Act of 2025. Supervisor Pyska, and I know Brock, you're here for this item, so if you can come up.
I'm also hoping that Director March is on. Is he on Zoom?
With one N.
Glenn with one N.
It's all right, we can get started. Superintendent Falkenberg is here to talk about the local impact of the secure rural schools not included in the federal funding currently, and he has can speak to the history and the impact that our schools will feel, as well as Director March. Hopefully he could join us. If not, I do have some notes because some of that funding is used by the county for infrastructure, particularly roads. It's usually split 50-50. So I will pass it over to you. Oh, and I'll also mention that this is something that NACO's been championing. So Supervisor Sabatier and myself talked about this a lot on our trip to DC recently, about a month ago, nationally, how this is impacting counties. Happy to advocate for this.
Go ahead, Brock.
Well, I appreciate the time today. I am here just to ask that you generate a letter of support in favor of reauthorization of the Secure Rural Schools Act. In order to really understand the Secure Rural Schools Act, we first kind of have to take a look at the Forest Reserve Act. And the Forest Reserve Act came about around 1908. And at that point in time, it outline the authority of the president to establish national forest lands and how those lands should be managed. Shortly after initiation, it was amended at the request of the states to address what we call the 25% pass-through rule, and it sets aside 25% of all timber sales on forest land, national forest land, to be distributed to the state, and that was later distributed directly to each county. That 25% is then split, 50% going to the county, 50% going to the schools. And within the Forest Reserve Act, schools may utilize 15% of those funds to address countywide educational initiatives, with the remainder of those funds being distributed to community college and school districts that contain national forest land or are adjacent to bordering national forest land. So in Lake County, we use 15% of the funds that are generated for the schools each year to offset the cost for the operation of the Taylor Observatory and the Norton Planetarium. We use 10% of those funds go to our local community colleges, with 9% going to Mendocino College and 1% going to Woodland College. And that's based on the amount of forest land that exists within their district. The remainder of the funds, which is 75%, is then distributed between Upper Lake, Lucerne, and Canocti Unified School District. 92% of that remainder going to Upper Lake Unified School District, 5% to Canocti, and 3% to Lucerne. Again, based on the percentage of forest land that is contained within their districts. Sometimes people get this Secure Rural Schools funding, or really I should say, maybe the Forest Reserve Act funding, as PILT, payment in lieu of taxes. This is not payment in lieu of taxes. This is specifically utilized to address the impacts of activities in our national forests. Sometimes we have people frustrated that we can't distribute this money more broadly, as we have state forest land in our school districts. We have BLM land, Bureau of Land Management land, in our school districts, and we have a military reserve land in our school districts. So all of our school districts have some sort of governmentally owned land within them, but this is distributed specifically to the districts that have national forest land. That model of funding, that 25% pass-through funding, basically went up until about the year 2000. And 10 years prior to that, we started to see a slump in timber sales across the nation as the Endangered Species Act started to limit or make it much more difficult to harvest timber on national forest land. So the Secure Rural Schools Act of 2000 was established as a temporary, short-term funding model while the federal government, Congress in particular, took on the task of balancing the demands of the the demands of the Endangered Species Act and reestablishing timber sales. They have never been able to come to a consensus on how to manage that. So for the last 25 years, counties and schools have continued to receive the Secure Rural Schools funding in lieu of the 25% payment pass-through. With the exception of 15-16, there was not a reauthorization of the Secure Rural Schools for that particular year. So that particular year, we only saw the funding for Forest Reserve, again, 15%. So we went from roughly $500,000 to $14,000 on that 25% sales. If
we were not to receive this funding, ultimately, we would have to answer the question of how do we continue to fund the observatory, the planetarium, and the funds that are passed through to the school districts, which would equal about 2.5 full-time equivalent teaching positions. And primarily, you're going to see that impact in the Upper Lake Unified School District, but the other districts would be impacted as well. Are there any questions of me at this time?
Vice Chair?
So out of the 465, 2023 was the last year we have the number for, it looks like, and that was 465,000. That's what the report states, fiscal year 23.
That is roughly the number that we've received each of the last few years, about
Okay.
450.
Okay, so
plus or
about
minus $1,000.
half of that, 232,000 or so would have gone to the schools, and the other equal half would have gone to the county for roads. Is that?
The other half, you are correct.
Okay. All right.
Goes to the county, and I don't speak to the county just because I suspect you know more about how you're utilizing those funds than I do.
Okay, that was going to be a question I had for Glenn too. I don't know if he'll be here.
I'm not sure if we're going to have staff on, but I have some notes.
Yes, I think Matthew
Oh, great.
may be on as well.
Perfect.
Matthew?
Good afternoon, board, and my apologies for not being in the chambers today. I do have this is Matthew Rothstein, Chief Deputy County Administrative Officer, and I do have information from Director March on what the impacts would be if our SRS funding is not received moving forward. Director March indicates that in the short term, SRS funds would be used for school area signage and for pavement markings and speed studies. And he noted that speed studies must be conducted by a traffic engineer, which is a contractor, not a staff person. And Director March indicated that they are interested in doing studies generally looking at the areas of schools to mitigate concerns as regarding the traffic patterns around schools and then to encourage people to slow down in the areas of our schools. So I just wanted to share that on behalf of Director March since he isn't immediately available, but those would certainly be significant impacts.
Thank you, Matthew.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so our letter of support is to Congressman Thompson. He's working collaboratively with Congressman LaMalfa on this. Our county is not being hit as hard as other counties in Northern California that have bigger areas, larger tracts of forest lands, but it is significant. It's significant enough for us to really have concerns and see the impact to our schools. And as you can see with the infrastructure piece from the county is to make our schools safer. So that's why I thought it was urgent to bring this to us so that we can have this discussion, so the board is fully aware of how this funding cut directly impacts us in Lake County.
Supervisor Sabatier?
Yeah, just a brief comment and a question. I think this is a bipartisan issue. I know I sat down in the White House with Modoc County, who is very red, very conservative, and they were very concerned about their losses as well. And so I think this goes across the board that people are not wanting to see this go away because it's been a support system and they've been utilizing it for the good reasons that we receive it. I did have a quick question. From what I understand, it expired in June of last year. It just hasn't necessarily been re-signed. Is that correct?
It expired in June of last year, and that means that it will fund this year.
It wasn't reauthorized.
It wasn't reauthorized, and we will stop receiving funding as of April of this year.
Okay. Well, it's too bad it wasn't reauthorized, but definitely in support of this letter to, I know we're speaking to the choir with our congressman, but appreciate what he's doing and anything we can do to back him up and let him know that we can help his voice become louder.
Did you have something? Or? Yes, no, this has been, I know that the fly-in that RCRC had, Modoc County, I don't know if it was Ned or
Ned.
It's Ned. Yeah, so there's Ned, he's also a big part of RCRC, and then also Jerry Byrne, who's the chair of RCRC. When they had went out to DC, that is one of the topics of discussion they had when it came to this secure schools. And so, yes, this is a really important letter as well, because I know you had mentioned the studies, or I think Matthew had mentioned the studies that Glenn wants to conduct, and there has been a lot of issues regarding speeding around schools and whatnot, as you know, Supervisor Owen. So this funding is critical in that aspect. So of course, naturally, I think we're all on the same page with supporting this letter. So I don't know if there's anything else you want to add, Brock, or if I should open it up to the public from there.
I don't have anything I'd like to add. I just want to make sure I thank all of you for your consideration, and anything we can do to assist the schools and assist with the infrastructure around the schools, I think is needed at this point. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone from the public would like to speak on this item? Anyone on Zoom? I'll bring it back to the board for action.
Mr. Chair, oh, do you have something?
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to second.
Oh, Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the letter of support for HR 1383, the Secure Rural Schools Reauthorization Act of 2025, and authorize the chair to sign.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0-0. Thank you, Brock, for coming forward, and thank you, Matthew, for helping us out with that.
Thank you, Brock.
Thank you for your patience.
Shall we continue on? Let's see it's 12:15. You want to go to, how does the board feel? Oh, yeah, let's go ahead and move forward with that one. Let's see, the extra item. Let me get it real quick. So we'll go back to 4.1, consideration of First Amendment to Memorandum of Understanding between the Lake County Sanitation District and Earth Foundries Incorporated for operations and placement of a mobile pyrolysis unit carbonizer in Middletown. We have CDD Director Turner and Special Districts Administrator Bore.
Maria Turner, Community Development Director. The extra item you have before you today is to make a tiny modification to a memorandum of understanding for Lake Osan. I don't know if you switched your hats, but this is for Lake Osan.
Shall I? Yes, okay. So we are reading this and addressing this as the Lake County Sanitation District.
Earth Foundries Incorporated has been in continual operation of a single carbonizer, which is processing the vast amounts of trees and wood down in the Lake Osan property in Middletown. They have a deadline coming up and a lot of wood to burn before April 30th. And so they looked into and were able to secure a second carbonizer, which will help to increase the amount of wood that they can process in a 24-hour period. We did take a look at the impacts. The main impact would, by adding this carbonizer, would be air quality impacts. And so the Lake County Air Quality Management District did do their calculations and are comfortable with operation of this second one. We then realized that we needed an adjustment to the Memorandum of Understanding because it only accounts for one carbonizer, and so you have a modification, the first modification to that Memorandum of Understanding before you today. It has been vetted by County Council, and I do have a version signed by the contractor in digital format that I forwarded to Johanna. And Special District Administrator is more familiar with this project ongoing than I am, so I would defer to her for any questions.
Any questions from the board? Supervisor Sabatier?
This is an easy one. There was just one thing, and you and I spoke about this earlier. Obviously, your team has reviewed any impacts. I'm assuming based on the air quality controls response that it's a CEQA exempt process. Does that need to be in one of the whereases? Because in the original, there's nothing regarding the potential impacts of the project, and in this one there's not, and we're adding more. And since that statement was made, I'm wondering if we need to put it in there, or since this is a lease rather than a project itself, if it doesn't even belong there.
We do have a notice of exemption that was already filed, so we'll amend that. But it doesn't, the CEQA evaluation is not part of the Memorandum of Understanding. Oh, additionally, there are a couple contingencies for air quality to be comfortable with the second carbonizer, and that is that no additional wood will be imported for processing at this location, and that the existing wood and the carbonizer will both maintain their current setbacks from the creek, and that it is a hard deadline to be done on April 30th.
If there's no more questions, I'll open it up to the public. Hearing no public input, I'll bring it back to the board. I don't know, Robin, if you had anything you wanted to add.
Well, just that there is significant room to add another carbonizer. There's a lot of wood that needs to be burned. And this will help mitigate some additional issues we've been having with people kind of breaking into the plant and cutting up the wood and absconding with it, which is kind of counterintuitive of what this process is supposed to be doing. So we fully support a second one being put there and disposing of the wood correctly.
All right, seeing no other comments, if there's any action you'd like to take.
I move that we approve the First Amendment to the MOU between Lake County Sanitation District and North Foundries, Inc. for operations and placement of a mobile pyrolysis unit carbonizer in Middletown, and authorize the chair to sign.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Lloyd?
Oh, sorry. I apologize. So I just wanted to make sure, because I think what was posted on Granicus was a previous draft, and I'm confirming with Director Turner if that's the case, right? Prior to the revisions that was approved as to form. And I'm strictly going by me pulling it up. And so that for purposes of the motion, if what's being submitted to the board is what is the approved as to form version, it would be as amended, only because.
As amended.
Thank you.
Okay.
Second.
And I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Can I ask a question first? Just the only difference is a signature? There's no difference in any of the text?
There are differences with the text, and either Director Turner or I could walk
I would
your board
prefer that
through,
we
right.
know exactly what was changed compared to what's on our agenda, just to at least, if we don't know, then obviously the public doesn't know.
I defer to County Council.
So the first change would be on the first recital, where after the phrase original agreement, there's a added in parentheses agreement, so for better reference with a capital A, so that the original agreement would be referring to the agreement. And then the second change would be on what's being amended. The amendment document would state that the section 1 of the agreement is hereby amended to state the following. And so that's in reference to the initial agreement with a capital A. And so section 1 would then be amended to state that the mobile pyrolysis unit processing program in Lake County, California shall include operation of 2 carbonizer units, and in parentheses, carbonizer, at the Lake Sand property. The property chosen for the operation of the carbonizer is owned and controlled by the Lake County Sanitation District, in parentheses, Lake Sand, at the address of 20126 Highway 175, Middletown, California. And those are the only changes for purposes of the amendment.
Just a brief question. Do we need to change the title to "and placement of 2 mobile pyrolysis"? Because the title is A, mobile. Just thought I'd ask before we approve.
I used the original title in order to indicate First Amendment.
And that would be fine, because the substance itself essentially changes, references 2 carbonizer units as the carbonizer with a capital C.
Thank you.
All right. So I still have the same motion and second. You're good with that? All right, so I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0-0. I'm going to go ahead and move on to 7.4, since we have about 10 minutes. Is that CAO? Did you have another?
I need to brief you and Ms. Turner on something
Okay,
urgent.
okay.
Just
So,
your district and her staff.
okay, so let's break for lunch then and go
If you
from
don't
there.
mind.
Sorry about that, Robin.
That's okay.
We'll go ahead and come back at 1:25, or why don't we say 1:30? 1:30.
1:30.
1:30. All right, we'll see you after lunch.